guys, this is your friend, and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy the fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now, let's start the fanfic.
What if Naruto joined Nevermore Academy and faced the Hyde monster? Chapter 1. You sure about this, pervy sage? This vibe here is weird. Naruto Uzumaki spoke his thoughts out loud, not caring for the looks he'd already earned from the so-called outcasts around him. Nevermore Academy was supposed to be a haven for the unusual. Vampires with two long smiles, werewolves with bright eyes and twitching ears, sirens whose voices rolled like honey over glass. Or people like him, people who didn't fit a category. His ability, to clone himself several times over, wasn't born from training or magic. It was a coping mechanism shaped by years of loneliness and the ache of being unseen. The first time it happened, he hadn't even meant to. 1 second, he'd been talking to himself. The next, there'd been someone answering back, wearing his face and smiling like it actually understood. "Stop making up words, kiddo," the tall man beside him said, voice half growl, half laugh. Jiraiya's white hair shimmered like frost in the overcast light. He moved with the lazy confidence of someone who'd survived too many fights and learned not to rush toward the next one. "You're here to learn, remember. Try to act like it won't kill you. Feels like it might." Naruto's hands stayed buried in his pockets. "You could still teach me yourself. I was doing fine on the road. You were drifting," Jiraiya replied. "There's a difference. You need kids your age, not old men who write terrible novels." "You said it, not me," Naruto muttered, earning a cuff on the back of the head for his honesty. The staircase climbed endlessly toward carved double doors marked Headmistress Weems. The stone walls were alive with creeping vines, the air smelled faintly of rain and ink. Naruto glanced at the gargoyles watching from the rafters and made a face. Even the decorations looked judgy. "That's culture, brat. That's creepy." Jiraiya snorted and pushed open the doors without knocking. "Principal Weems, the circus has arrived." The woman behind the mahogany desk rose smoothly, her height and posture enough to silence the room. Platinum hair coiled into a perfect twist, icy eyes assessing the two of them as though cataloging specimens for a museum. "Jiraiya," she greeted, her tone equal parts warmth and warning. "Punctuality doesn't suit you. I'm trying new things," he said. "This one's a special case." Weems's attention turned fully to Naruto. "Mr. Uzumaki, welcome to Nevermore. I understand you've an ability." Naruto shifted. "You could call it that. He can make copies of himself," Jiraiya explained before Naruto could downplay it. "Full physical doubles. Learned it on instinct. Keeps him company." Weems's gaze softened, though only slightly. "A defense mechanism, a habit," Naruto said. "Guess it stuck. Fascinating." She gestured toward the chair opposite her desk. "Here at Nevermore, such talents are valued. Our goal is to help students refine their gifts and understand their origins." "Mine's easy," Naruto said. "I got lonely." The honesty startled her for half a breath, then she nodded. "Then perhaps we can teach you other ways to fill that space." Jiraiya smiled faintly. "Told you she's good at this. If I may be so bold, Naruto, can you demonstrate your ability?" Principal Weems's voice was polite, but curious, clinical curiosity, the kind he was used to. Most adults asked out of caution. She asked to get out of the study. Naruto grinned despite himself. "You mean you want me to?" "Within reason," she said, folding her hands neatly atop her desk. "Oh, this should be good," Jiraiya muttered, stepping back toward the bookshelf. "Try not to break anything priceless, kid. No promises." Naruto rolled his shoulders and stepped into the center of the office. He'd been through this 100 times before, teachers, government weirdos, scientists, all wanting to see. They never understood it, but they always wanted proof. Fine. He liked giving them a show. "Okay," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Try to keep up." He pressed his palms together, a faint shimmer of energy flickering between them. Then he exhaled sharply, and the room bloomed with motion. A flash of light, a faint ripple in the air, and suddenly the office wasn't big enough for all of them. 3 identical Narutos stood in a half-circle around the original, each grinning like they'd rehearsed it. One leaned against the wall, another perched on the corner of Weems's desk, balancing on one hand like gravity was optional. Weems blinked once. "Impressive," she said, her voice steady though her eyes betrayed the astonishment. "Fully physical replication." "Yup," the one on the desk said, spinning her nameplate between his fingers. "Every one of us thinks, talks, and punches the same." "Don't touch that," she said automatically. The clone set it down carefully, upside down, and gave her a cheeky grin. "And how many can you make?" "Depends on how much ramen I've had," Naruto said, and all 4 of them laughed at once. "But if I really push it," he snapped his fingers, and the office filled again, 5, then 10, then 20 versions of him spilling into the space like orange and purple dominoes, some leaning on chairs, others peering at the rows of books with identical curiosity. "You've got to be kidding me," Jiraiya said, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Weems took a slow, deliberate breath. "Mr. Uzumaki, that will do." "Ah, come on," said 3 of them at once. The originals shared a laugh before Naruto waved his hand, and the copies vanished in small bursts of smoke that smelled faintly of ozone and pine sap. When the air cleared, only one remained, the real one, leaning casually against the doorframe. "You could say I'm my own support group," he said. Jiraiya sighed. "Show off." "Hey, if you've got it, clone it," Naruto shot back, smirking. Weems stared for a moment longer before composing herself. "Extraordinary," she murmured. "A tangible manifestation of identity replicated and sustained through sheer will." "I just call it multitasking," Naruto said. Jiraiya chuckled, shaking his head. "He'll fit right in." Weems smiled faintly. "Perhaps. Though I imagine the faculty will find him challenging." "Story of my life," Naruto said. Weems's attention softened slightly. "Your gift was born from solitude, Mr. Uzumaki. Perhaps here, you'll learn you don't need it to be seen." Naruto looked down for half a heartbeat, thumb brushing the green stone hanging from his neck, his only habit when words hit deeper than he liked. Then the grin came back, reckless as ever. "We'll see," he said. "But don't complain when the halls get crowded." Weems exhaled quietly, a mix of exasperation and amusement. "I'll keep that in mind." The office door opened then, letting in a chill draft and a new set of voices. "Principal Weems." Gomez Adams's booming greeting echoed through the room. "Always a pleasure to step into your domain of delightful dread." Weems smiled thinly. "Ah, perfect timing," Jiraiya muttered, "and here comes Act 2. Naruto turned just in time to see the Adams family sweep in, black, white, and eccentric in perfect measure, and one silent girl whose stare could have cut glass. Gomez and Jiraiya's laughter filled the office, old stories tumbling out between booming voices and half-remembered chaos. Something about a cursed temple in Prague, a toad the size of a carriage, and a honeymoon accidentally spent in the spirit realm. The sound was too alive for the gray room, it made even the portraits on the walls look startled. Wednesday barely listened. Her focus had shifted to the blonde boy standing beside them. He didn't fit. Not in the way most Nevermore students didn't fit polished misfits with cultivated oddities. He was rougher, broader through the shoulders, the kind of muscle that came from movement, not mirrors. His uniform clung where it shouldn't, the jacket was unbuttoned, and the sleeves were rolled to the elbows. A black ink tattoo curled down his right forearm in sharp and purposeful lines. Another peeked from the collar of his shirt. Japanese kanji etched against skin that looked too young to carry memorials. Minato, Kushina, Hiruzen, names, carved like ghosts he refused to forget. His hands were scarred across the knuckles, pale where skin had split too many times and healed over unevenly. He moved like someone who'd learned the world's language through fights, not lessons. And yet, for all that coiled restlessness, there was something almost performative about him. The grin that flashed too easily. The way his posture always dared the room to test him. A boy desperate to prove he existed by sheer volume alone. Her gaze followed his line of sight and found it fixed not on her father, not even on Principal Weems, but on Morticia. Calm, steady, his eyes didn't flinch from the woman's elegance, if anything, they seemed to brighten. Admiration, curiosity, maybe even challenge, all layered behind the bluest eyes she'd ever seen. Wednesday's lips thinned. She diagnosed silently. Possibly reckless. Definitely trouble. He turned his head slightly then, as if sensing her scrutiny. Their eyes met hers, flat as still water, his, sharp and restless, a storm pretending to be a smile. He didn't look away. Of course, he didn't. Boys like that never did. See something you like, pigtails. Oh, how bold, her mother slowly said, smiling, as she saw the boy who was focused on her. Her eyes traveled purely to her daughter. She has that effect on men, something she noticed and never cared for. She has her Gomez after all. Then her gaze drifted, softly, deliberately, to her daughter. Wednesday didn't blink. Of course, she didn't. But her posture stiffened, the faintest tightening of her jaw betraying something like irritation, or interest, though she'd sooner be buried alive than admit it. Morticia saw it immediately. She always did. A lifetime of reading hunger and pride had made her fluent in such small betrayals. He has your taste for defiance, darling, she said, voice lilting with fond cruelty. It's refreshing. I don't have a taste, Wednesday replied flatly. Everyone does, Morticia said. Some simply starve longer before indulging. Gomez, oblivious to the tension, or perhaps enjoying it far too much, clapped Jiraiya on the back with a thunderous laugh. Ah, Larissa, your school still breeds the finest chaos. This young man looks ready to duel heartbreak itself. He's got the stamina for it, Jiraiya said with a grin. Less sense, though, a common symptom of youth, Morticia observed, gliding past them with effortless grace. As she did, Naruto's gaze followed, that spark of awe and mischief lingering just a little too long. Wednesday noticed. Of course, she noticed. Predictable, she thought, though her fingers tightened slightly around the strap of her satchel. Men and ghosts, always entranced by the same things. Morticia paused at the door, her voice a whisper of perfume and power. Do take care of him, Principal Weems. He looks like the sort who might attract storms. He's already brought one, Weems replied, dry as parchment. Morticia's smile widened. How delightful. Very, but Jiraiya, Naruto. If you may excuse yourselves, I have business to discuss with the Adams family. Very, but Jiraiya, Naruto, Weems said, her voice returning to its usual crisp authority. If you may excuse yourselves, I have business to discuss with the Adams family. Jiraiya inclined his head, that half bow, half salute that could pass for respect if one didn't look too closely. Of course, Principal, we'll be around. Don't let the charm in this room get lethal. It already has, Weems murmured. Gomez laughed, delighted. She has your tongue, my dear Morticia, sharp enough to open arteries. That's why I keep her company, my love. Morticia's lips curved just slightly, the ghost of a smile that could start fires or stop hearts. Come on, kid. Jiraiya's hand found Naruto's shoulder, steering him toward the door before the conversation descended into whatever elegant madness fueled the Adamses. Let the adults talk. Naruto didn't move at first. He lingered, eyes still drawn toward Morticia, perhaps not even out of attraction now, but fascination. She moved like silence given form. And she had looked at him, not through him, not past him, the way few ever did. Then his gaze slid sideways, catching the girl again. Wednesday, still watching him, expression unreadable, eyes too old for her face. For a beat, neither spoke. Then Naruto smirked faintly, jerking his chin toward her. You should smile sometimes, might make people think you're alive. Wednesday's eyes narrowed just slightly. And you should talk less. It might make people think you're intelligent. Jiraiya groaned quietly. I see the diplomacy lessons are already working. Weems exhaled through her nose. Mr. Uzumaki, you'll wait in the hall. One of our staff will take you to orientation shortly. Yeah, sure, Naruto said, shoving his hands into his pockets. As he left, he paused by the doorway and looked back, that lopsided grin still plastered on his face. Nice meeting you, Principal. Ma'am. Morticia inclined her head gracefully. The pleasure was mutual, young man. Try not to die of boredom before term's end. No promises, he said, flashing a grin that made Gomez howl with laughter. The door shut behind him with a soft click. In the hallway, the air was cooler, still carrying the faint scent of old wood and lilac polish. Naruto leaned against the wall, exhaling. You really know how to make an impression, Jiraiya said, crossing his arms. What? I was polite. You called her kid, pigtails and flirted with the mother. Naruto grinned. Didn't hear any complaints. Jiraiya sighed. You're either going to thrive here or burn it down. Maybe both, Naruto said. Depends on the vibe. The hallways of Nevermore were quieter now, only the whisper of distant voices and the soft creak of old stone beneath their boots. The earlier laughter from Weems's office faded behind them, replaced by the low hum of rain beginning to fall outside. Naruto shoved his hands deeper into his jacket pockets as they walked. He didn't say much, neither did Jiraiya. They didn't need to. That was the thing about traveling together for so long, silence had become a language of its own. When they reached the front steps, the open courtyard stretched before them, wet cobblestones glinting under the gray light. A line of ravens sat along the wrought iron fence, watching with unsettling patience. Jiraiya stopped just shy of the doors, turning to face him. Well, kid, he said, voice roughened by wind and miles and years. This is where we part ways for now. Naruto blinked. You're not even gonna stick around for, 5 minutes. Jiraiya smirked. 5 minutes is enough for you to start a food fight, trip over the headmistress, and declare yourself king of the weirdos. Better I leave before that happens. Naruto snorted. No faith? Huh, I've got faith, Jiraiya said. Just not in your restraint. That earned a laugh, but it faded quickly. The truth of it settled between them. This was real. Jiraiya wasn't just dropping him off for another mission or lesson. He was leaving him here, in a world full of strangers. Naruto kicked at a loose stone on the step. You're really heading out already? Got business. Leads to chase. Books to not write. Jiraiya's grin softened. Besides, this place is good for you. You've been running so long, kid, it's time to stop and see what happens when you stay somewhere. Naruto looked down at the slick stone beneath his sandals. I don't really do staying. Jiraiya's hand landed on his head, firm, warm, steady. Then learn. That's what this is for. Naruto didn't answer right away. The wind caught at his jacket, carrying the faint scent of rain and old paper from the school behind them. Finally, he said quietly, You think I'll fit in here? Jiraiya chuckled low in his chest. Kid, you never fit anywhere. That's your superpower. That pulled a grin from Hyde, small but real. Guess so. Listen, Jiraiya continued, his voice gentler now. You've got a weird way of finding people who need you, even when they don't know it yet. That's your other superpower, so please don't waste it here. Make some noise, make some trouble, and make sure they remember your name. Naruto's throat felt tight, but he nodded. Yeah, I can do that. They stood there a moment longer, the storm building overhead, ravens shifting on their perch, thunder rolling like distant applause. Jiraiya turned toward the path, adjusting the pack slung over his shoulder. And hey, don't break the school. Or the students. Or the principal. No promises. Of course not. Jiraiya started down the steps, his silhouette shrinking into the mist. Then, without turning back, he raised a hand and called, Take care of yourself, kid. Naruto watched him go, the broad shoulders, the lazy stride, the sound of boots on stone fading until all that remained was rain. For a moment, the boy who never stood still just stood. The world felt bigger without Jiraiya beside him. Louder. Emptier. Then he smiled, a small yet determined expression. Guess it's just me now. A flash of orange broke the gray morning as he pulled up his hood and turned back toward the school gates. Inside, the halls of Nevermore waited dark, strange, and full of secrets. And Naruto Uzumaki, the boy who had built himself from loneliness, stepped forward to meet them. The moment the door closed behind Jiraiya and Naruto, silence folded over the room like a velvet curtain. Only the faint creak of the old rafters and the steady ticking of a grandfather clock dared intrude. Principal Weems exhaled softly, the faintest sign of tension slipping from her frame. Your family's timing, as always, is impeccable, Morticia. The boy is unique. Morticia smiled from where she stood near the window, her pale hands resting gracefully on the back of a chair. A word that walks the fine line between admiration and fear, she said. You may as well call him what he is, interesting. Gomez chuckled, already helping himself to a small glass of brandy from Weems's sideboard. Ah, Larissa, that boy is the sort of chaos that makes life worth living. You saw it, didn't you? The sparkle in his eye. Like a man on fire who forgot to scream. I saw recklessness, Weems replied. And potential disaster. He's powerful, yes, but untethered. That ability of his isn't mere duplication, it's born from emotion. Loneliness, he said. That's not training, that's trauma. Morticia tilted her head, thoughtful. All great art is born from trauma, Larissa. Why not power? Because art doesn't explode into 30 living copies of itself, Weems said dryly. Wednesday listened quietly, her gaze unfocused, at least, that's how it appeared. In truth, she was memorizing every word, each pause, each glance. They were talking about him, dissecting him like a curiosity. A new specimen in Nevermore's collection. She found she didn't like that. He's unstable, Weems continued. And undisciplined. That kind of power, tied to that temperament, it's a recipe for catastrophe. Or revolution, Morticia said. Her tone was gentle, but the words hung heavy. The difference lies in how well he learns to use it. Do you approve of him, Mother? Wednesday asked suddenly, her voice as level as her expression. Morticia's smile deepened by a fraction. Approval is such a small word, my raven. I appreciate him, his spirit. He reminds me of someone. Father. No, she said, her voice softening. Of you. Wednesday blinked once, slowly. Her father laughed loud enough to startle the portraits. She's right, my dear. Gomez said, grinning widely. He's all energy and defiance. A volcano in human form. You, my little storm cloud, are his opposite. Fire and frost. The gods themselves would take notes. I'm not interested, Wednesday said flatly. Yet, Morticia murmured. Weems cleared her throat, her patience thinning, but her tone calm. Regardless of potential, chemistry, she said carefully, I must insist we maintain boundaries. He's here to learn control, not to be anyone's. She glanced briefly at Wednesday, distraction. Control is overrated, Gomez declared. Passion drives greatness. Morticia drifted closer to Weems's desk, her presence cool and deliberate. You worry too much, Larissa. The boy's power is no more dangerous than his heart. And hearts, as you know, cannot be trained. They can be broken, Weems said softly. Yes, Morticia agreed, and that's what makes them interesting. Wednesday's gaze lingered on her mother for a long, unreadable moment. Then she turned toward the door, her braids shifting over her shoulders. If we're finished romanticizing potential disasters, she said, I'd like to return to something practical. Like my room. Of course, darling, Morticia said smoothly. Principal Weems, I believe our business here is done. Weems nodded once, her composure returning. Indeed. I'll have a guide escort you to orientation shortly. As they turned to leave, Morticia paused by the door, glancing back toward the space where Naruto had stood minutes ago. Her smile was faint, but it lingered like a secret. That boy, she said softly, as the kind who changes the weather without meaning to. And you think that's a good thing? Weems asked. For the garden, Morticia said, storms are a necessity. With that, she swept out, black silk whispering against the floor, Gomez following like a lovesick comet. Wednesday lingered 1 second longer, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, she turned and closed the door behind her. Weems stood in the silence that followed, her eyes fixed on the faint swirl of smoke still lingering from Naruto's clones. God help me, she murmured. The semester hasn't even started. The heavy oak door opened, and the Adams family stepped into the hall with Principal Weems close behind. The light spilling through the stained glass painted the corridor in shades of violet and blue. It was quiet, until laughter echoed down the hallway. Not one laugh, several. Well, Morticia murmured, her tone smooth as velvet, he's certainly social. At the far end of the corridor, Naruto sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by himself. Half a dozen clones lounged around a makeshift circle, a deck of battered playing cards spread between them. 2 were arguing over a bet, 1 was accusing the other of cheating, and 1 was laughing so hard he fell backward, scattering cards like confetti. The real Naruto sat among them, grin wide and bright. Ha, I told you, read 'em and weep, losers. You're a cheater. 1 clone shouted. I am you, Naruto said, laughing. How does that even work? The laughter filled the hall again, too loud, too easy. It bounced off the stone walls, echoing in a way that almost disguised its hollow nature. Almost. Morticia watched with quiet fascination, her hands folded in front of her. It's a performance, she said softly, mostly to herself. A child pretending the world is full by multiplying the one person who never leaves him. Weems's lips pressed into a line. You see why I worry. Gomez, of course, was delighted. A genius solution. Why suffer solitude when you can outnumber it? Wednesday didn't speak. Her eyes were fixed on the boy in the center of it all. The one who laughed the loudest, the one whose grin faltered half a second before returning even brighter. She saw it then. The tiny fracture between his joy and his exhaustion. The momentary shadow that passed over his face before he threw another card down and whooped in triumph. The laughter died eventually, leaving behind the faint hum of rain on the window and the low crackle of the candles that lined the hall. By the time Principal Weems and the Adams family returned to their discussion, Naruto had dispersed his clones, the last puff of smoke fading into the dim corridor. Only the smell of ozone and a few scattered playing cards remained. When the quiet settled, a man appeared at the far end of the hall, tall, thin, his gray suit immaculate and his posture exhausted by decades of dealing with students who thought themselves cleverer than the rules. Mr. Uzumaki, he called, adjusting his spectacles. Principal Weems has asked that I show you to your quarters. Naruto stood, brushing ash from his sleeve. Do I get a map too, or do you just trust me to get lost? The man gave him a dry look. Nevermore has its ways of correcting those who wander. Creepy answer, Naruto muttered, falling into step beside him. They moved through corridors that bent like veins through stone, past portraits that seemed to breathe and staircases that rearranged themselves when no one was watching. The teacher's voice filled the silence with rules, curfew at 10, no open flames, no experiments involving duplication outside approved areas. Naruto grinned. So, no fun at all. Precisely, the man said. Room 207. Try to keep the noise level below catastrophic. The key turned with a heavy click, and the teacher disappeared as quietly as he'd come. The dorm smelled faintly of salt and cedar. One half of the room was already claimed, bed unmade, a towel hanging from a chair, an aquarium bubbling softly on the desk. The fish inside glowed faintly blue, watching him with unimpressed eyes. Hey, said a voice from the window. You the new guy? Naruto looked up. A tall boy leaned against the sill, his damp hair dripping onto the floor, his grin lazy and confident. Preppy, his attire clean and perfect with a slick and neat haircut, shaved, and odd color green, blue eyes. Darker skin and an overall demeanor that screams wealth. Yeah, Naruto said. Naruto Uzumaki. Kent, the boy replied, shaking water from his hand before offering it. Sirens. Don't worry, I don't sing in my sleep. I'll be honest with ya, bud, I don't know what a siren is. Naruto admitted to slinging his duffel bag onto the floor and staring at his empty walls and desk in the corner for schoolwork. Kent laughed, not mocking, but light and fluid, like water over glass. Figures. You're not from around here, huh? Naruto shrugged. You could say that. Where I'm from, people aren't exactly labeled by species. Well, around here, it helps to know who might charm you to death. Kent stretched, rolling his shoulders as he stepped away from the window. Sirens were good with persuasion. Voice, looks, charisma, all that stuff. Don't worry, I keep mine in check. Most of the time. Naruto gave him a side eye. Yeah, that sounds totally trustworthy. Relax, new guy, Kent smirked, leaning against his desk. You're not my type. Good, Naruto said, unzipping his bag. I don't need to fight my roommate on day one. Kent laughed again, his grin widening. I think we'll get along fine. For a while, the room filled with the quiet sounds of unpacking, Naruto tossing shirts into drawers, Kent humming an easy tune under his breath. The air had that strange mixture of tension and newness that came with beginnings. So, Kent said eventually, curiosity creeping into his tone, I heard some of the teachers whispering about you. The clone thing, that's real. Naruto paused, a book halfway out of his bag. Guess news travels fast. This school runs on gossip, Kent said. I'd be disappointed if it didn't. Yeah, Naruto muttered, setting the book down. It's real. I can make copies of myself. Been doing it since I was a kid. Wild, Kent said, eyebrows rising. Like, fully real people. Oh no, just me, myself, and I. It's a coping mechanism. Kent tilted his head, his grin fading just a little. That's supposed to be a joke. Nope. Something I'm lonely. Kent blinked, caught between a laugh and a frown. Damn, man, that's dark. Naruto shrugged, pretending it didn't sting to say out loud. Yeah, well, I'm not great at subtle. The siren leaned against his desk, crossing his arms. Guess not. But hey, at least you're honest about it. Most people here hide their weird behind charm or drama. Not really my style, Naruto said. If I'm gonna be weird, might as well own it. Kent smirked again, the tension lifting. You'll fit right in then. Nevermore's like a magnet for the messed up and magnificent. Naruto huffed a quiet laugh, tugging the last of his shirts into the drawer. Good. Maybe I'll finally be average somewhere. Trust me, Kent said, straightening up, nothing about this place, or you, looks average. Naruto raised an eyebrow, hearing a comment like that from a teenage boy looking at him like that. Was this a good time to joke about his first kiss being a dude? Nah, Batman couldn't get that confession. When you unpack, I'll give you a tour around the school, mainly the gossip circles. We'll meet with the new kid and her roommate. You'll love her, she's a dog. The hell did that mean? Not really my style, Naruto said. If I'm gonna be weird, might as well own it. Kent smirked again, the tension lifting. You'll fit right in then. Nevermore's like a magnet for the messed up and magnificent. Naruto huffed a quiet laugh, tugging the last of his shirts into the drawer. Good. Maybe I'll finally be average somewhere. Trust me, Kent said, straightening up, nothing about this place, or you, looks average. Naruto raised an eyebrow, catching that look. Quote. You're not hitting on me, are you? Kent blinked, then barked out a laugh. Relax, man, I'm just being nice. When you finish unpacking, Kent said, waving a hand toward Naruto's half-empty duffel, I'll give you a tour around the school. Mostly the gossip circles, since that's where all the fun is. You'll meet the new girl and her roommate. You'll love her, she's a dog. Naruto froze mid-flight. Quote. She's a what? Kent grinned, teeth flashing. Werewolf. Naruto stared at him for a long moment, waiting for the punchline that never came. Quote dot dot dot. You're serious? Yeah, Kent said, eyebrows knitting. You didn't know. I mean, I heard some stuff about outcasts, but I thought that was just. Naruto gestured vaguely at Kent's too perfect uniform, the weirdly alive paintings, the echoing halls, metaphor. Not actual monsters. Kent laughed, loud and sharp. Wow, they really didn't tell you anything, huh? I thought Nevermore was just some fancy school for weird kids. Naruto said, voice climbing. Like, artsy, moody, maybe the occasional telepath, not, full moon means lock your doors kind of weird. Kent was still laughing, wiping a tear from his eye. Oh, man, you're in for a ride. Naruto blinked at him. So you're actually, what, a siren? Like, sing songs people to their death siren? Pretty much, Kent said proudly. Though I mostly just win karaoke nights. Naruto rubbed his temples. Right, sirens, werewolves, vampires. And I'm the freak because I make extra copies of myself when I get sad. Exactly, Kent said with a grin. Welcome to Nevermore, man. You're among your people now. My people, Naruto repeated, incredulous. My people are ramen, bad decisions, and sleep deprivation. Then you'll fit right in, Kent said. This place thrives on chaos. Naruto slumped onto his bed, eyes flicking around the room like he was still waiting for someone to jump out and tell him it was all a prank. You're telling me vampires are real? Yep, and werewolves. Uh-huh, and you, fish guy, sing at people until they drown. Prefer, siren, but yeah. Naruto stared at him. Quote dot dot dot. I'm gonna need a minute. Kent chuckled, pushing off the desk. Take your time, you'll get used to it. I doubt that, Naruto muttered. Next thing you're gonna tell me someone here talks to ghosts. Kent paused. Actually, there's this kid in 3rd year. Don't finish that sentence, Naruto said quickly, holding up a hand. I can only process so much crazy per day. Kent grinned. You'll get there, clone boy. Trust me, weird's the only normal we've got. Naruto stared at the glowing fish tank, the flickering reflections of light playing against the walls. He wasn't sure if he was supposed to laugh, scream, or lie down and pretend this was a fever dream. Man, he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. Pervy Sage would love this place. Kent's laugh echoed softly. Yeah, we've got a few teachers who'd probably worship that guy of yours. Sounds like he'd fit right in with the chaos department. Naruto smirked faintly. Oh, he'd love it here. Probably write a book about it too. Kent rolled his eyes, grabbing his jacket. Come on, clone boy, Kent said, slipping on the jacket. You're about to see the rest of this madhouse. Naruto stretched, his arms cracking overhead. Already regretting it. Don't worry, Kent said, holding the door. We're just meeting the new girl and her roommate. Boys aren't allowed in the girls' dorms, and girls aren't allowed in ours. Something about maintaining order. Naruto frowned. So this monster school draws the line at co-ed hangouts. That's where they get strict. Kent grinned. Gotta start somewhere. They walked down a narrow corridor that smelled like old wood and rain. Shadows clung to the edges of the lamps, and the portraits lining the walls seemed too alive for comfort. Naruto swore. One of them smirked when he passed. So, he said finally, this school full of vampires, fish people, and werewolves has normal rules. Yeah, Kent said, we like to pretend it's civilized. Makes the normies sleep better. Okay, normies. That another race or something? You're a little dull. I'll punch you. Noticed. Sweeting sees the blonde glaring at him with those pretty blue eyes. Kent knew he wasn't lying. Naruto would knock him out. Normies is just slang for the normal people in town. They do things to use, we them. The likes. Yeah, they insult some of us, so I sing, and now their basketball star is the lips of their football star. Pranks and sometimes fights. I don't fight, don't want any damage to my money maker. I'll cover it. Naruto smiled at that thought. They stepped into the main standard room, high-ceilinged, circular, filled with mismatched furniture that looked stolen from 5 different centuries. Firelight shimmered against tall windows that framed the storm outside. The whole place felt half alive, humming quietly beneath the chatter of the students. A few heads turned their way. Naruto felt the eyes, curious and judging, but not hostile. Just watching. He likes it a lot. Kent leaned toward him, voice low. Don't mind them. New faces always make the gossip rounds before dinner. Yeah, Naruto said, starting to notice this place runs on rumors. Before Kent could respond, the heavy doors on the far side of the room flew open, and a burst of color and noise swept in. There you are. Enid Sinclair was everything this school wasn't: color, motion, warmth. Her blonde hair faded into pink and blue at the tips, perfectly curled even in the damp air. Her uniform looked regulation but somehow glittered anyway, sleeves rolled up, collar undone, nails bright enough to blind. She radiated confidence. She probably didn't actually feel. Kent sighed, dramatically running his hand through his hair before resting his palm on his cheek. You're early. Fashionably enthusiastic, Enid said, already crossing the room. Her energy filled the space like sunlight through fog. Nearly skipping as her hair bobbed up and down, seeming to leave a trail of color behind her as she skipped. Enid Sinclair, she said quickly, hand outstretched, grin wide. Stepping well into Naruto's view, his only real thought is how cute the girl is. New here too. I just got assigned to show you around with my roommate. She reminds him of a golden retriever, a lot. Kent made a strangled sound halfway between a laugh and a groan. Wait, Adams, the one and only, Enid said with forced cheer. I don't think she's said a single word to me yet, but we're working on it. Wednesday Adams, Kent said. She's been here like 30 minutes, and I already heard she stabbed a guy with a scalpel at her last school. Enid's grin tightened, but she didn't deny it. Yeah, she's intense. But hey, opposites attract, right? Alleged, Enid corrected quickly. Anyway, she's waiting at the stairs for the tour. You coming? Naruto exhaled slowly, shaking his head. Sure, why not? I've already met a siren and a fish with an attitude. Might as well add a sociopath to the list. Kent laughed. Good luck surviving her, man. I'll keep your side of the room warm. Appreciate it, Naruto said, tugging his jacket on. Enid looped her arm through his like they'd known each other for years. Come on, let's not keep her waiting. She looks like the type who times people's footsteps. Kent leaned against the doorframe, smirking. She probably does. Naruto glanced back at him. If I die, tell Jiraiya I was right, this place is cursed. Will do, Kent said. The hallway outside felt colder somehow, the walls humming with the sound of rain and something unseen. Up ahead, waiting at the base of the grand staircase, stood Wednesday Adams, posture perfect, expression carved from marble, her dark eyes locking onto them the instant they appeared. Her uniform was flawless, crisp black and white against pale skin, her braids hung neatly down her shoulders like lines of ink on paper. She didn't smile, she didn't move, she simply watched. Naruto slowed beside Enid, whispering out the corner of his mouth, "You sure she's not a ghost?" 50-50, Enid whispered back, forcing a bright laugh that sounded one octave too high. Wednesday, this is Naruto. He's new too. Hey again, pigtail, looking good, Naruto said, not to flirt, no. He knew his very presence annoyed her more than anything. Wednesday's eyes narrowed by a fraction, just enough for him to know she remembered him. The tilt of her head was almost imperceptible, but the weight of her stare could have cracked stone. Mr. Uzumaki, she said, her voice cool and even. I see your manners remain as questionable as your hair. Naruto grinned, unfazed. Nice to know I made a lasting impression. Beside him, Enid let out a nervous giggle that died almost instantly under Wednesday's gaze. Sue, she said, stepping slightly between them like a human buffer. The tour. We're doing that now. It'll be super fun. Wednesday blinked once, slow and deliberate. Define, fun, talking, exploring. Not murdering anyone before lunch, Enid said, her smile too wide, her voice a pitch too high. Wednesday turned toward the stairway, the hem of her uniform shifting like a shadow over polished floorboards. I assure you, the temptation persists. Naruto smirked, leaning toward Enid as they followed. You weren't kidding about her. Told you, Enid muttered. She's been my roommate for half an hour and I'm already 90% sure she sleeps with a knife. Wednesday didn't look back. 85. Enid blinked. Wait. Seriously. Depends on the night, Wednesday said. Naruto chuckled under his breath. She's oddly cute, weirdly, and in an odd way. Then again, this is Nevermore, he needed to accept the concept of weird. Maybe because it's clear this girl is dangerous and he's into that. He shoved his hands in his pockets. So, what's the deal? You are always this cheerful, or do I bring out your sunny side? Your optimism is a disease, she said without missing a step. I suggest quarantine, Enid sighed, rubbing her temple. Okay, you two are not allowed to banter, this is how horror movies start. Relax, Naruto said, if it turns into one, I'll clone myself until the killer gets tired. Or until you run out of IQ points, Wednesday replied. Enid groaned softly. Oh my god, it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. Wednesday stopped at the base of the next stairwell, finally facing them. Are you finished? Naruto met her gaze evenly, blue to black. Not even close. For a beat, neither moved. The tension was so thick it practically hummed. Then Enid, with the survival instincts of a hostage negotiator, clapped her hands together. Courtyard. Now, look at that. Stairs. Let's go. She all but herded them up the steps. As they climbed, Naruto leaned slightly toward her. So, she's always like this. Enid nodded. Oh yeah, she's like a cat with better posture. You blink wrong, she kills you with her eyes. Guess I'll keep her busy then, he said, half grinning. Please don't, Enid muttered. I'm still unpacking. Behind them, Wednesday's voice was soft but sharp enough to cut. I can hear you. Good, Naruto said without turning around. Saves me from repeating myself. For the first time, something flickered in Wednesday's expression, not quite amusement, but close enough that it startled Enid into silence. Naruto caught it, too. His grin widened. Enid practically bounced down the last step and into the courtyard, the soles of her shoes slapping against wet stone. The rain had thinned to a cold drizzle, the kind that hung in the air like breath. Nevermore looked different out here, alive and half asleep at the same time, its towers brooding over the students that wandered through the gray light. She spread her arms wide. Ta-da! The quad, where reputations live, die, and sometimes burst into flames. Naruto tilted his head back, taking in the rows of statues, the carved gargoyles staring down like they were waiting for an excuse to move. Cheery place. It's an acquired taste, Enid said brightly, then turned toward Wednesday, who stood a few paces behind, her posture rigid. Right, roomy, acquired, perhaps, enjoyed, doubtful. Wednesday's tone had cooled several degrees since the stairs. Every word she threw at him carried a deliberate edge, as if she was testing how deep she could cut before he bled irritation. Naruto shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. You always narrate in funeral prose, or am I just special? Special implies value, she replied. You're more of an experiment. Enid groaned under her breath. Okay, moving on. Over there, we have the fangs, that's the vampires. Don't stare too long, they think it's flirting. Naruto smirked. What happens if I stare back? You lose blood, Wednesday said flatly. He laughed once, a sharp sound. You really know how to sell this place, don't you? I'm not a salesman, she said. I'm an observer. And so far, I've observed that you can't stop talking. The smile on his face thinned. Guess you're just easy to talk to. That would imply I'm listening. Enid winced, glancing between them like she was watching a match lit in a room full of gasoline. Okay, over here's the furs. Mostly nice. Full moons get a little hectic, but, She stopped as they began acting like a headache pack of dogs doing anything and everything. Naruto howled back. Do you ever stop? Wednesday asked, eyes still on Naruto. The noise, the movement, the endless need to be seen. Enid stared back behind her, staring at the annoyed Adams and a blonde staring at the vampire table still. Nope. Deal with it, pigtails. Some of us want to be alive, unlike you. Wednesday's gaze cut to him like a blade unsheathed. You mistake being alive for being loud, she said, her tone smooth but venomous. One is a state of existence. The other is a cry for attention. Naruto's smirk faltered into something colder. Guess it's easy to look down on people when you've got your head stuck that far up your own gloom. Enid froze mid-step, her pastel hair catching the wind as she looked between them in growing panic. Okay. Field trip energy, you guys. Let's not start the semester with a homicide. But neither of them moved. Wednesday took a deliberate step closer, her shoes clicking against the stone path, the space between them tightening until he could see the faint glint of rain on her lashes. You think deflection makes you interesting? She asked quietly. You laugh too quickly. You talk too much. You act like it doesn't bother you to be stared at. He met her eyes, blue bright against black. You act like you don't care about anything at all. But you're still standing here, talking to me. Her jaw tensed. Observation requires proximity. Sure it does, he said. Keep telling yourself that. Enid stepped right between them, hands out, grinning like someone trying to defuse a bomb with a smile. So, that's the vampires, that's the werewolves, and, oh look. A perfectly safe, non-confrontational fountain. Let's go there. Like, now. Naruto huffed out a breath through his nose, breaking eye contact first. Whatever. Lead the way. Wednesday stayed silent but turned on her heel, braids swinging with sharp precision. Her posture didn't break, but something in the air around her shifted, tighter, heavier. As they walked, Enid muttered under her breath, you two are like one bad day away from an actual murder mystery. I'll be fine, Sparkplug, she can't beat me. Enid's grin faltered into a nervous laugh. Right, because nothing says, first week welcome, like a duel to the death. Good morale booster, honestly. Wait, Sparkplug. Wednesday's head tilted the slightest fraction, enough that Naruto felt it like a physical motion. She moved without a sound. The next step closed the space between them until the edge of her sleeve brushed his arm. The contact was colder than the drizzle, like she'd carried winter in her braid. Her voice dropped so low it might have been meant only for him. You mistake patience for weakness, she said. Underestimate me if you prefer. It will make your end more sudden. The words slid over him and left the air ringing. For the first time since he'd arrived, Naruto's usual grin stalled. This wasn't the sparring banter he gave and took on the road. There was a careful, clinical intent to her cruelty, like someone testing a blade on the softest part of the hand. Cute, he managed, throat tighter than he liked. Really threatening. Enid's hands hovered uselessly between them. Okay, people, tone it down. We are walking, not finishing each other off. There's a gazebo with. She fell silent, watching Wednesday's jaw set. Her fingers twisted in the strap of her bag. Seriously, Wednesday, chill. I do not chill, Wednesday said. The words were flat, not angry, more like a statement of fact. Naruto felt the laughter he'd planned dissolve into something else, cold awareness. He noticed the small things, the way Wednesday's pupils pinched, the steadiness in her breathing, the little flecks of muscle where her hand rested against her thigh. All of it said practiced stillness, not accident. Maybe I am loud, he said, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. But loud's not the same as, he stopped. He didn't want to say vulnerable. The word tasted like giving ground. You are loud because you are afraid, she supplied, as if completing his sentence for him. Noise is a cover for emptiness. She stared, no, glared, because his reaction wasn't what she'd expected. She'd gone for the vein, not the surface. She wanted silence, retreat, the falter in his grin that would tell her she'd found something soft underneath the noise. Instead, she got that same irritating spark in his eyes. Naruto's jaw tightened. The grin that lingered there wasn't humor anymore, it was a challenge. Congratulations, girlie, you know the shallow end. That kid, that's lonely, he creates clones to fill that hole, is loud, and seeks validation. Wow, what a shocker. Who would have thought the kid with tattoos on his neck needs someone to look his way? Wednesday's brows twitched. A fraction, but enough. His sarcasm wasn't a defense, it was defiance. He turned the knife around, handed it back to her, and smiled while doing it. Her tone sharpened, the faintest hint of irritation seeping through the frost. Deflection doesn't make the truth less true. No, Naruto said, voice flat now. Accepting your faults does. The air between them was brittle. Rain whispered against the stone, beating on his lashes, tracing dark lines through her braids. She'd wanted to unravel him, see the bravado crumble. Instead, he dragged the curtain aside himself, daring her to look and find nothing she hadn't already said. He'd taken her weapon and dulled the edge with honesty. Enid, standing awkwardly to the side, bit her lip. Okay. Whoa, deep cuts and emotional surgery, love that for you both. Maybe we tone it down before someone needs a counselor. Neither moved. Wednesday's voice dropped again, quieter now, but colder for it. If you know you're a cliché, why parade it so loudly? I like people. I like helping people. I like life. That depends, she said softly, on how much of yourself you have to waste to do it. He huffed a small, humorless laugh. Guess that's where we're different. You hide from people, I try to reach them. Wednesday tilted her head slightly, dark eyes narrowing. You mistake avoidance for weakness. And you mistake connection for stupidity, he shot back. Not everyone who smiles is faking it. Enid winced, glancing between them. Okay, you're both terrifying in very different ways, but maybe save the existential cage match for lunch. Neither of them reacted. Rain dripped from the stone gargoyle above, landing between them with slow, deliberate rhythm. Wednesday finally spoke, her tone precise and detached again. Your optimism is inconvenient. Naruto smirked faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes this time. And your cynicism's exhausting. For a heartbeat, neither looked away. It wasn't flirtation, it wasn't hatred, it was a clash of philosophies pressed into silence. Then Enid cleared her throat and forced brightness into the crackling air. So, tour, fountain, maybe a snack that isn't emotional tension. Naruto stuffed his hands in his pockets, stepping back first. Lead the way, Sparkplug. Enid sighed in relief and started walking, muttering something about needing earplugs for her next roommate therapy session. Wednesday lingered half a second longer, eyes following him before turning toward the path. Her voice was quiet, almost to herself. Liking life doesn't make you interesting, she murmured. He smiled. I'll let the real me know you said that, Kay. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Offhand, too natural, like it wasn't meant for her but slipped out from habit. She stopped walking. Enid kept talking ahead, words tumbling cheerfully about campus rules and roommates, but Wednesday didn't hear her. The courtyard around her felt oddly still, sound thinning until only the rain remained, steady, deliberate, intrusive. She turned her gaze fully on him. Something didn't fit, not in the obvious way, his face, his voice, the flicker of expression when he smiled. All that was identical to the boy who'd irritated her since the office. But something was wrong, something small, like a word out of place in a sentence she'd memorized. His posture was the same, his grin just as infuriating, but there was a disconnect she couldn't define. A rhythm was missing from the way his eyes tracked hers. A lag. Maybe it was nothing. Perhaps it was everything. For the first time in a long time, Wednesday Addams didn't know. Her eyes narrowed. What did you mean by that? Naruto tilted his head, that same half grin in place. By what? The real me comment. Oh, that, he shrugged. Figure of speech. Don't overthink it. But she was overthinking it. Because people lied all the time, she'd studied liars, dissected them, but this wasn't a lie. This was something else, something she couldn't quite see the edges of. The air between them shifted. If he was bluffing, he was good. Too good. No twitch in his jaw. No flicker of avoidance. Just calm, unbothered confidence. And that infuriated her more than anything. She took a step closer, her gaze locked on him like a scalpel finding soft flesh. "You're deflecting." He smiled wider. How so? She hated the flicker of doubt that rippled through her thoughts. It was foreign, unacceptable. Her perception was supposed to be flawless, unyielding. But looking at him, this boy who could vanish into smoke and laughter, she wasn't sure what she was looking at anymore. Clone, real, copy, original. It didn't matter which was standing in front of her. What mattered was that, for the first time, she couldn't tell the difference. Enid's voice finally broke the silence, distant and forced cheerful. "You guys coming, or are we standing dramatically in the rain all day?" Wednesday blinked, the trance breaking. "We're coming," she said, her tone sharp, mechanical. As she turned away, she glanced once more over her shoulder, just a fraction, half expecting him to flicker, to vanish, to prove her right. He didn't. He only smiled, that maddening, easy smile that said he knew exactly what she was thinking. And that, more than anything, made her blood run cold. The path to the fountain wound through the courtyard, the stones slick with rain and the air humming faintly with life, ravens shifting on ledges, vines climbing the old walls as if they were breathing. Enid led the way, still talking, her voice a splash of color against the gray. "So this is the main quad. Classes are split by ability type, and don't ask about the fencing club unless you like bruises. Oh, and that building over there is the conservatory. It smells like dirt and genius." Naruto nodded along absently, half listening. Sounds like a fun crowd. But Wednesday wasn't listening to either of them. She watched him instead, her gaze tracing every movement. The flick of his wrist when he gestured, the way his boots scuffed the stones at uneven intervals, the faint puff of breath that came too steady for someone walking uphill. It was nothing, and it was everything. Something in her whispered that this was wrong, not dangerous, just off like an echo with no origin. Enid stopped by the fountain, spreading her arms. Ta-da! Centerpiece of Nevermore. Half the legends start or end right here. Drownings, hauntings, secret societies, very cheerful stuff. Naruto smiled faintly, the kind of grin that could mean amusement or distraction. "Sounds like home already." Water rippled in the basin, catching his reflection, and for just an instant, it wavered. Not distorted by the water, but misaligned. His mouth moved a fraction slower than his real one. His reflection's grin lagged a heartbeat behind. Wednesday's breath caught. She blinked once, hard, and when she looked again, it was fine. Normal. Completely ordinary. Wednesday didn't speak after that. Enid kept talking, her voice rolling over the courtyard like sunlight against stone, warm, rambling, entirely human. Naruto answered when prompted, sometimes with jokes, sometimes with that infuriating half-smile that looked too natural to be faked. But Wednesday heard none of it. Her mind had gone silent, focused, surgical. The reflection. It had been wrong. Not a trick of the water. Not her imagination. She knew what she'd seen. And yet, now, nothing. The boy before her moved easily, his breath visible in the cold, the sound of his steps distinct and unbroken. His hair caught the light. His skin carried warmth. Too much warmth. Her eyes narrowed. She adjusted her pace to match his, falling slightly behind. Observation required distance, not interference. She noted the rhythm of his walk, the way his heel fell. No irregularity, no delay. But when he turned to glance at Enid, laughing at something trivial, the motion lagged by a breath. Not enough for most eyes to catch. Enough for hers. Her fingers twitched. She wanted to reach out, touch his sleeve, and feel if it was real. But she wouldn't. She'd rather live with uncertainty than give him the satisfaction of seeing her doubt. So she said nothing. The silence stretched. Enid filled it automatically, nervous energy bursting from her in waves. So, yeah, that's the Gargoyle Tower, and those windows there are the music wing. Oh, and if you hear singing at night, it's probably sirens, not ghosts. Probably. Naruto laughed, easy and warm. Comforting. Wednesday stayed 3 steps behind, her eyes flicking between him and his reflection again and again. Each time, it matched perfectly. Each time, she told herself it hadn't before. Her mind circled the problem like a predator. A clone, a double, a boy who could multiply himself and leave a perfect facsimile to roam freely. The very idea should have been simple to confirm. Her entire life had been observation, deduction, proof. But he defied proof. He existed on the knife's edge of her certainty. And she hated it. Enid looked back at her, finally, still chattering. Hey, you good back there? You've been awfully quiet. I'm thinking, Wednesday said, her tone clipped, almost brittle. About what? Whether he's real. Naruto stopped mid-step and looked back at her, rain dripping from his hair into his grin. I can pinch myself if it helps. Her expression didn't change, but her voice was low. I'd rather do it myself. Can you two stop? I'm starting to feel like a third wheel. I like you too much for that spark plug. The rest of the tour passed in uneven silence. Enid tried her best to keep it alive, talking fast enough to fill every pause, as if sound alone could drown the weight of whatever passed between the other two. Naruto listened just enough to nod at the right moments. Wednesday listened too closely and said nothing. They passed the glass-walled greenhouse, where moss glowed faintly blue in the damp light, the library with its windows flickering like candle flames behind the fog, and the shadowed bell tower that cut the clouds like a blade. Enid's voice bounced off the old stone. So that's pretty much the basics. You'll figure the rest out. Maybe don't talk to the gargoyles. One of them bites. Naruto chuckled, glancing up at the roof. You say that like it's a joke. Wish it was, Enid said. Nevermore has personality. Yeah, that's one word for it. When they reached the iron gates of the courtyard, rain still falling in thin threads, Enid turned to him with her usual burst of energy, bright, warm, and just a little nervous. So, you survived your first hour. Gold star. Naruto grinned. Didn't even catch fire. That's gotta be a record. Totally. Anyway, she hesitated, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. If you're not busy later, maybe we could, hang out. You know, new kid solidarity. Grab Coco, dodge the weird stares. Nothing dramatic. He looked at her for a moment, surprised by the softness under her cheer. Then he smiled, genuinely this time. Yeah, I'd like that. Enid's grin returned, brighter than the rain deserved. Cool, it's a date. Well, not a date, but, okay, I'll stop talking now. A date, he said, surprised, not listening to anything besides, it's a date. She froze mid-bounds. Wait, what? Seriously, what? He said, shrugging like it was the simplest thing in the world. Enid's face broke into the biggest smile yet, and she actually jumped, feet leaving the ground for half a second. Okay, deal. Tomorrow after class, Coco and Chaos. You, me, sugar, and gossip. I'm so in. Behind them, Wednesday's voice sliced through the rain, flat and unimpressed. Are you done performing this mating dance, or should I avert my eyes? Enid spun, pointing dramatically at her. It's called being social, Wednesday. You should try it sometime. Naruto snorted. She's got a point. Wednesday's stare was sharp enough to cut stone, but Enid just looped her arm through Naruto's and started tugging him toward the dorms. Come on, Sparkplug's in charge now. I'll text you with the details on where to meet. Don't you dare ghost me, literally or otherwise. He laughed, letting her drag him along, her energy bright enough to make even the gray rain seem alive. Wednesday stayed behind, staring at the boy as he walked towards the boys' dorm. Only to stop in his step, turning around, pulling down his eyelid, and sticking his tongue out. She blinked. Gone. Her eyes narrowed, fist clenching, the entire time Uzumaki Naruto had a clone insulting and edging her. He deemed her unworthy of his presence. The boys' dorm was warm and dim, with a faint scent of saltwater and old cedar. Naruto shut the door behind him with his foot, tossing his jacket over a chair. The faint hum of Kent's aquarium filled the silence, the neon fish drifting lazily through the blue light. Kent was sprawled on his bed, one arm behind his head, scrolling through his phone. "So," he said without looking up, "how was the grand tour? Learn where they keep the bodies?" "Not yet," Naruto said, stretching his arms. "Met some people, though. One of them's definitely trying to figure out if I'm human." Kent laughed. "Let me guess, Adam's kid." "Bingo." Naruto grinned, rolling his shoulders before dropping to the floor for a quick set of push-ups. "And her roommate, Enid. She's a lot." "That's one way to describe her," Kent said, smirking. "She's been here a while. Kinda famous for being the school's social sunshine. She invited you to hang out already, didn't she?" Naruto paused mid-rep. "How'd you?" Kent turned his phone around, showing a post already up on Nevermore's gossip feed. "New kid alert. Blonde, loud, probably dangerous. Already has plans with yours truly throwing kisses, Naruto groaned, dropping onto his back. "She moves fast. You have no idea, it's a werewolf thing. They find someone who meets their mate requirements and hope on it. She's a good girl, though, one of the better ones. Her blog is pretty good," Kent said, laughing. "Half the school's gonna think you two are dating by breakfast." Kent raised a brow. "You're into her. Fun, bright, pretty. Could be worse." Kent grinned, sitting up. "So, you like her?" Naruto shrugged, a hint of color touching his cheeks. "Maybe. She's easy to like." Kent chuckled, leaning back again. "Man, this place is gonna eat you alive." "Wouldn't be the first time," Naruto said, smirking faintly. They fell into comfortable quiet then, broken only by the hum of the aquarium and the patter of rain against the window. For a moment, Naruto let his head rest back against the floor, eyes half-lidded. The memories of the clone, the entire tour, the banter, Wednesday's stare, flowed through him like echoes. She'd watched him too closely. She'd seen something. He exhaled slowly. "This school's full of strange people. You have tattoos, dude." Naruto cracked an eye open, smirking up at the ceiling. "Yeah, and," Kent sat up a little, propping his elbows on his knees. "And you're judging them for being weird. You've got kanji crawling up your arm like a magic scroll, and I'm pretty sure that one on your neck is glowing under the light." Naruto lifted his head, glancing down at the ink that peeked past the collar of his shirt. The lines shimmered faintly, the rain light from the window catching on it just enough to make it seem alive. He snorted. "They're just names. Names that look like a wizard wrote them," Kent said, grinning. "What are they, like, battle honors?" "X's." Naruto rolled onto his side, giving him a dry look. "Family." "Oh," Kent said, tone softening a little. "Cool." "Not really," Naruto said after a beat, lying back again. "But they're mine." For a while, neither spoke. The quiet stretched. Not heavy, but honest, just the sound of the rain and the fish tank bubbling softly. Then Kent chuckled under his breath. "You know, for someone covered in sentimental ink and emotional chaos, you seem pretty chill." Naruto grinned without opening his eyes. "Yeah, well, I'm only half here most of the time anyway." "Clone thing again?" "Not really." Kent laughed. "Man, if I had that power, I'd never do homework again." "It doesn't work like that." Kent laughed again, rolling onto his side to face him. "What do you mean it doesn't work like that? You literally have infinite free labor." Naruto's grin faded into something quieter. "Yeah, that's what I thought at first, too." He opened his eyes, staring at the ceiling like it was holding the rest of the sentence for him. "But they're me, Kent. Every single one of them. Everything they see, everything they do, I get it all back when they poof. It's not like having help. It's like living 10 lives at once and being tired from all of them." Kent blinked, his smirk slipping a little. So, wait, you remember everything? Everything. Naruto sat up, resting his forearms on his knees. The talking, the fights, the jokes. Even the boring stuff. All of it piles up when they come back. Kent whistled low. That's a lot. Naruto shrugged, a half-smile tugging at his mouth. Yeah, that's why I don't use them as much anymore for tasks like that. Makes my head feel like rush hour traffic. Not even the worst part. What is? I have free will, and if they're just me. Kent frowned, sitting up a little straighter. Wait, are you saying your clones also choose things? Naruto let out a slow breath through his nose. Yeah, they think, they feel, they're me, but also, not. Sometimes they argue with me. Sometimes they don't return immediately. One time, a bunch of them tied me up so they wouldn't goof. Kent's brows drew together. You mean, like, they run off? Yeah, Naruto gave a short laugh that didn't sound amused. Once, I made one during a fight, and he didn't wanna disappear when it was over. Said he liked being real. Guess he figured if I made him survive, he'd keep doing that. The room went still except for the hum of the tank. Kent didn't know what to say, and Naruto didn't fill the silence. After a moment, Kent said quietly, so when they go, what happens? To them, I kill them. They're still part of me after all. Can't let that go unchecked. Kent's laugh died in his throat. For a beat, the only sound was the aquarium's soft burble in the rain against the window. You, what? Kent said slowly, as if the words themselves were unfamiliar and dangerous. You kill them, like, permanently. Naruto's jaw worked, the grin gone. He looked small for a second, a kid with too many shadows. Not like chopping up bodies or anything, he said, voice low. They dissolve back into me. But when a clone refuses to fold back, when it chooses its own path and hurts someone, or starts something I can't control, I stop it. I make it end. It's cleaner that way. He rubbed at his knuckles, staring at the scar tissue like it was a map. Feels like the only way to keep people safe. Keeps me safe, too. Kent blinked, the color draining from his face. That's, Jesus. That's a lot to carry alone. It is. Naruto didn't try to sugarcoat it. People think it's cute or useful. They don't think about what it means to have 100 tiny lives pile into your head. About having to be responsible for the mistakes one of them makes. About having to decide which ones can stay free. Silence fell, thick and careful. Kent swallowed, then shifted on the mattress, looking smaller in the dim room. Do you regret it? He asked finally, softly. Naruto closed his eyes for a long moment. When he answered, the words tasted like iron. Sometimes. The ones that come back happy, I like them. The ones that come back broken, I hate that I ever made them. But regret doesn't change the choices I have to make. It just makes them heavier. Kent let out a long, low whistle. That's, Jesus. If I'd known my roommate had to carry a cabinet of ghosts on his conscience, I'd have brought more snacks. A humorless, tired little smile tugged at Naruto's mouth. You do that anyway. Kent reached out, awkwardly, then set his hand on Naruto's shoulder, an oddly ordinary gesture in an otherwise very abnormal life. You don't have to do it alone, he said. If you ever want to, if you need someone to listen to the 100 people in your head, I'm around. Naruto looked at him, something like surprise and relief flickering behind his eyes. Thanks, he said quietly. Means more than you know. Outside, the rain softened into a steady hush. Inside, two boys in a glowing fish tank sat with the weight of other lives between them, less tidy than they'd like, but shared at last. The storm broke overnight. When the sun rose, it came in slowly and golden, spilling across the cracked windows of the boys' dorm like honey. The air still smelled faintly of rain, but the world was dry, polished by the storm's passing. Water clung to the ivy like crystal beads, and the sky stretched white and blue, streaked with thin, clean clouds. Naruto woke early. He always did when the world was too quiet. Kent was still snoring, one leg hanging off the bed, his phone glowing on his chest. The aquarium bubbled softly beside him, the light turning his face a lazy green. Naruto stretched, joints popping, and pulled on his still damp jacket. He paused by the window. Outside, the courtyard gleamed, puddles flashing with morning light, students already crossing the flagstones, laughter breaking the silence. A rare kind of morning. Still, alive, honest. He smiled to himself. Guess the world's trying again. Dropping onto the floor, Naruto began a basic morning calisthenic workout. Today was the first day of class. Outside, the birds had started before the bells, crows and ravens both, their cries echoing through the bright morning. The sound fit Nevermore in a strange way, half warning, half welcome. Naruto kept his pace steady, breathing in through his nose, out through his mouth, the rhythm grounding him in the way training always had. The floorboards creaked faintly beneath each push-up. He counted quietly. 47, 48. The air still held a chill, and every exhale fogged faintly against the windowpane. He didn't mind. Routine kept his mind from splitting apart under the noise of everything new. Back on the road with Jiraiya, it had been simple. Wake, move, eat, learn, repeat. Out here, surrounded by kids with fangs and scales, routine was the only thing that still felt real. When he finished, he rolled his shoulders, wiped sweat from his forehead, and looked at the reflection in the glass, hair wild, eyes clear. The scars on his knuckles caught the sunlight, thin and pale. Still here, he murmured. Kent stirred on the other bed, groaning. Dude, it's barely 6. What are you doing, training for a marathon? Something like that, Naruto said, grabbing a towel. Gotta stay sharp. First day. Kent blinked blearily, then laughed into his pillow. You're insane. Nobody even likes the first days. Naruto grinned. Then I'll like it enough for everyone else. I'm gonna hit the showers. Kent waved a hand lazily from under his blanket. Knock yourself out, clone boy. Try not to scare anyone before breakfast. No promises, Naruto said, grabbing a change of clothes and slinging a towel over his shoulder. The hallway outside the dorm was still half asleep. Golden light poured through tall windows, the air faintly cool and tinged with the smell of polish and old books. Somewhere down the corridor, someone played a violin, slow, deliberate notes that wove through the quiet like a heartbeat. Naruto padded across the floorboards, bare feet whispering against the wood. He passed a few early risers, a pair of vampires gliding in silence, a werewolf boy yawning so wide it cracked his jaw, and each gave him a curious glance. He grinned back, nodding as if he'd known them all his life. The showers were steamy, fog curling around cracked tiles. He let the water run hot, heat sinking into his skin until the last ache of travel finally faded. For a moment, it was just him and the sound of rushing water. His mind wandered, to Jiraiya's parting words, to the echoes of last night's conversation with Kent, to the strange, black-eyed girl who'd cut through every lie before he could even think to tell one. Wednesday Addams, he said under his breath, water hitting his face in sharp rhythms. You're gonna be a problem, aren't you? He didn't sound annoyed. If anything, there was a hint of anticipation in his voice, curiosity wrapped in a smile. The drain hissed. Steam rose. Outside, sunlight crept higher through the stained glass windows, painting the hallways in shifting colors. By the time Naruto stepped back into the corridor, hair dripping and sleeves rolled, the school had begun to stir in full. Voices echoed down the staircases, books slammed shut, laughter rolled like thunder in the open courtyard. He pulled his jacket tighter, the air now carrying the hum of something alive, a day waiting to start, full of things to learn and people to surprise. All right, Nevermore, he murmured, glancing toward the direction of the main hall. Let's see what you've got. The sun poured through the tall windows of Nevermore's fencing hall, laying pale gold across the polished floor. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean, sharp, almost too still. Naruto stood in line, on time for once, already uncomfortable in his borrowed white uniform. The jacket bit into his shoulders, the mask under his arm felt too tight, and the foil in his hand weighed nothing, no heft, no rhythm, no honesty. He hated it. Around him, the students stood straight and perfect, their stances identical, their eyes fixed forward. He looked like the smudge on a painting. Maestro Vargas stalked the line with a hawk's precision. Form, focus. Fencing is the marriage of balance and discipline, two things I expect from all of you. Naruto shifted his feet. The uniform squeaked. Vargas's eyes snapped toward him. Mr. Uzumaki. New, I presume. Yes, sir. Have you fenced before? Never heard of this till now. Vargas's expression didn't change, though the corner of his eye twitched. Then today will be educational. Pair him with Mr. Donovan. A ripple of whispers moved down the line. Naruto followed the direction of Vargas's hand to a tall boy in a pristine uniform, blonde hair tied back, every inch of him polished with confidence. His smirk said good luck, but his eyes promised something meaner. Donovan's foil gleamed as he twirled it lazily. Welcome to class, new blood. I'll make it quick. Naruto grinned, friendly but not stupid. Appreciate it. Wednesday Addams, 3 places down the line, turned her head slightly at the exchange. Her gaze lingered just long enough to confirm what she already suspected. This wouldn't end quietly. On guard. The room snapped to attention as Maestro Vargas's voice cracked like a whip. The scent of metal and polish filled the air. Students stilled, the faint creak of shoes on wood the only sound. Naruto lowered his mask into place. It was too tight, the edges pressing into his cheeks, but he didn't care. He could feel the weight of everyone's eyes, the scrutiny, the quiet expectation that he'd make a fool of himself. Donovan shifted opposite him, the perfect picture of poise. His movements were clean, almost rehearsed, a predator circling prey he'd already decided was beneath him. Naruto raised his foil awkwardly, mimicking the stance Vargas had shown the others. His hands itched. His muscles wanted to move, to fight, to feel something real, not this staged elegance wrapped in white. Begin. The word barely left Vargas's lips before Donovan lunged. The first strike landed on Naruto's shoulder, fast, sharp, and precise. The impact snapped through the air like static. Point, Vargas called. Naruto stumbled a half step back. He hadn't even seen the move happen. Donovan straightened, his smirk visible through the mesh of his mask. Told you it'd be quick. Naruto exhaled through his nose, rolling his wrist. Guess I blinked. Try to keep your eyes open next time. The next round began. Donovan lunged again, the foil slicing through the air with clean, practiced rhythm. Naruto moved, late, clumsy, but not clueless. His parry came too high, but it moved. The blade met his opponent's just off-center, a messy deflection that still made a satisfying clink. Vargas's brows rose. Better. The rest of the class murmured quietly. Improvement that fast wasn't common. Donovan sneered under his mask. Don't get. I'm just trying to not get stabbed, dude, Naruto said, stepping into stance again, adjusting the angle of his feet the way Vargas had shown. He glanced at his opponent's shoulder, watching the way the muscle tensed before each lunge. He was reading him, and Wednesday saw it. Her eyes tracked every motion, how his guard was still wrong, how his weight distribution was uneven, but his reaction speed sharpened with each exchange. Instinct layered itself over ignorance, building something almost like rhythm. It wasn't grace, not yet. But it was honest. Donovan struck again. This time, Naruto dodged instead of blocking. He pivoted, sloppy, too wide, but his foil came up just enough to brush Donovan's arm. Touch, Vargas called, startled. A ripple of surprise moved through the students. Donovan froze for half a second, mask tilting toward Vargas. That doesn't count. He wasn't even in stance. A touch is a touch, Vargas interrupted, his voice clipped but approving. Uzumaki, keep your guard tighter. Less waste in your movement. Naruto nodded, breathing hard but grinning. Yes, sir. The grin wasn't arrogant. It was real, the kind that came when his body finally started listening to him. The match continued. Donovan lunged faster now, sharper, each move an attempt to reassert dominance. But the pattern had changed. Naruto began anticipating him, not with technique, but instinct. He moved like someone who'd fought before, not with blades, but with fists and survival. His footing improved, his timing sharpened. Each hit he took, he learned from. Each miss he corrected. By the fifth exchange, he parried cleanly. The sound of metal on metal echoed through the hall like a spark catching tinder. The other students whispered now, voices a low hum of disbelief. Vargas's frown softened into something dangerously close to a smile. Remarkably fast reflex adaptation, he muttered under his breath. Wednesday's eyes never left him. She didn't admire him, not yet, but her curiosity sharpened to precision. He wasn't refined, but he was adaptive. The kind of learner who improved not through structure, but through pressure. It was chaos made efficient. Again, Vargas said. Donovan hesitated, jaw tight. He lunged, this time trying to knock the foil from Naruto's hand. Naruto countered without thinking, dropping low, twisting his wrist, a move that didn't belong in fencing, more alley fight than technique. The two blades locked with a sharp clang. For a second, they were face to face, masks inches apart, breaths fogging through steel. Donovan hissed, "You're not supposed to move like that." Naruto grinned. "Then stop me." He shoved lightly, not enough to break the rules, but enough to make Donovan stumble back half a step. "Control, Mr. Uzumaki," Vargas barked. "This isn't a brawl." "Yes, sir," Naruto said quickly, straightening his stance. He wasn't mocking, he meant it. He wanted to get this right. Donovan lunged again, angrier this time, and Naruto met him. The blades struck, sparks briefly flaring in the sunlight. Both held position for a moment, neither giving ground. Then, with a twist, Naruto disarmed him. The foil clattered across the floor, spinning once before settling at Vargas's feet. Silence swallowed the room. Naruto blinked, realizing what he'd done. Oh, that was luck. Scratching the back of his head, chuckling as his cheeks turned red, his eyes wandered before landing on one of Wednesday Addams hidden underneath her black attire. She is once again wrong about Naruto, something that is immensely irritating, and most of all, that helmet slamming against his skull is about to show her a new side of him. Donovan, in anger, lashed out with his helmet, throwing it at the blonde when he wasn't paying attention. The steel connected with a sharp, hollow thunk against Naruto's temple. The sound cracked through the room like a whip. He staggered back half a step, blinking at the floorboards as the helmet bounced away and spun to a stop near Vargas's boots. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Naruto looked up. His expression wasn't rage, not yet. It was something quieter, heavier. His breath came steady, eyes sharpening from blue to something colder. The room seemed to hold its breath. Even Vargas froze. Wednesday's hand twitched against her hip, black sleeve shifting. She'd seen violence before, calculated, deliberate, but this was different. This was a reaction. Naruto reached up slowly, fingers brushing the side of his head. When they came away clean, no blood, he let out a short breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "Okay," he said softly, voice calm but stripped of its usual warmth. "Guess we're doing that, huh?" Donovan's smirk faltered. It was an accident. He closed the distance in a blink, shoulder driving forward, the clash of fabric and muscle loud in the hush. The two of them hit the floor hard, foils skittering away in a rain of steel. Naruto's fist came down once, quick and bright as a spark. Donovan twisted, grabbed a handful of his sleeve, and they rolled. Chairs scraped back, students shouting, a circle forming as if the noise itself pulled them closer. "Break it up." Vargas's voice cracked like thunder, boots hammering toward them. Neither heard. Donovan swung upward, his knuckles catching Naruto's chin. The impact stung, sharp, clean, and Naruto answered with an instinctive hook to the ribs. Breath left Donovan in a grunt, His elbow shot up in reply. The struggle was ugly, brief, alive. Two kids who'd been holding back for too long suddenly let loose. A flash of blonde hair, a flash of white uniform, the sound of fists finding walls and air. Vargas's cane slammed down between them with a sharp crack. Enough. The shock of the sound froze them in place. Naruto had Donovan pinned, one knee on the floor, fist but not thrown. Sweat slicked his forehead, his eyes were bright, focused, not wild. Donovan's chest heaved beneath him, fury and fear tangled together. Naruto blinked, the haze clearing, and pushed himself back. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, breathing hard but steady. He started it, he said again, quieter this time. Both of you, out, Vargas barked, voice shaking with fury. Now, before I decide to suspend the pair of you permanently. Naruto stood first, offering Donovan a hand. The other boy ignored it, getting up on his own, eyes burning. Fine, Naruto muttered, lowering his hand. See you after class, then. The maestro pointed toward the door. Detention. Immediately. And if either of you so much as look at a weapon before then, you'll answer to me. Yes, sir, Naruto said, voice calm again. When the others began to file out, Wednesday stayed still for a moment, the last echo of the fight humming through the room. The smell of sweat and dust still hung in the air, sunlight flashing across the scattered blades. She'd seen hundreds of scuffles, but this one lodged in her mind. Not because of the violence, but because of the pause right before Naruto stopped. He could have hit again. He didn't. That detail would bother her all afternoon. The door slammed behind them. The echo rolled down the corridor. Donovan peeled off toward the infirmary. Naruto waited until the footsteps faded before letting out a long breath. Well, he said to no one, rubbing the side of his head, that went about as bad as it could have. He stopped halfway down the hall, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Then his grin returned, slow, mischievous, familiar. A puff of smoke burst beside him. When it cleared, another Naruto stood there, identical grin and all. Okay, buddy, the original said, pointing at him. You know the drill. The clone saluted. Go sit in detention, keep your mouth shut, and look sorry. Exactly. You'll get extra ramen tonight if Vargas doesn't figure it out. The clone's eyes went wide. With egg, deal. The doppelganger jogged off toward the gym, whistling. The real Naruto watched him go, laughing quietly. Man, if I had one of those back in school, Iruka-sensei would have never seen me. He turned toward the open doors leading out to the courtyard. The sky outside was still blue from the morning's clearing, clouds drifting like lazy sails. A cool breeze caught his damp hair, and the tension from the fight slid off his shoulders. He rolled his neck, muttered, all right, let's see what the rest of this weird school's got, and stepped into the sunlight. He didn't have time to wait in detention. After all, he had a date, or at least something that had been loudly declared a date, by a certain werewolf girl who'd refused to take no for an answer. And he couldn't really sit in a room polishing swords while that kind of chaos was waiting for him. Besides, he muttered, grinning to himself, the clone's better at cleaning than I am anyway. The courtyard was alive again, washed bright by the afternoon light. Nevermore looked almost normal in the sun, students sprawled on the steps, ravens hopping along the railings, music spilling faintly from an open window somewhere above. Naruto shoved his hands into his pockets, the breeze tugging at the corners of his jacket. For the first time since arriving, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt, curious, like the world was watching him back. Shouldn't you be in detention? Adams, standing behind him, was killing what little good mood he had. God, what is with this damn girl? Naruto froze mid-step, a sigh escaping before he even turned around. Shouldn't you be haunting someone else right now? Wednesday stood a few feet behind him, black uniform sharp against the gold light. The breeze toyed with the ends of her braids, though she didn't seem to notice, or care. Her posture was perfect as ever, And her expression said you bore me even while her eyes flicked over him, cataloging every detail. I find your disregard for consequences fascinating, she said flatly. It's like watching a moth charge a candle and insist it's having fun. Naruto smirked, tilting his head. You've been watching me, huh? I'm flattered. Don't mistake curiosity for interest, she said, stepping closer. The sunlight caught the edges of her collar, but it never seemed to touch her face. You were assigned detention for fighting. Instead, you're loitering. He stuffed his hands deeper into his pockets. I sent a representative. Her brow arched slightly. A what? A clone, he said, as if that explained everything. Perfect copy. Cleans better than me, doesn't complain, takes orders, he's loving it. Wednesday blinked once, the smallest pause betraying her irritation. So you created a duplicate to serve your punishment. Yep, I call it time management. That's fraud, she said, voice cool. It's delegation, he countered, grin widening. Wednesday's expression didn't shift, but something in her gaze sharpened. You're aware that discipline exists for a reason. Sure, he said easily. To teach lessons. I already learned mine. And what lesson is that? He met her eyes, smile fading just enough to let something honest slip through. Don't let people hit you with helmets. Her stare was unreadable, and violence was the correct response. He shrugged. No, but it felt right. For a heartbeat, they just stood there, the world around them humming with sunlight and distant laughter while the space between them stayed taut, quiet, electric. Finally, Wednesday exhaled, just a little. You're either remarkably confident or foolish. The hell is wrong with you? In a sudden shift, a change she didn't expect, the tone shifted. And none of the wise bullshit. Ever since we met, you've been on my about anything. Her head tilted slightly, the only sign that his outburst surprised her. Excuse me. Naruto stepped closer, not menacing, just real. The sunlight caught the edges of his hair, gold against the gray stone. You heard me. You've been poking since day one. Every word out of your mouth's a knife, and half of 'em are aimed at me. Why? Wednesday's posture didn't falter. You mistake observation for malice. Don't do that, he shot back, voice low but steady. Don't hide behind fancy words just to say you don't like me. If you got a problem, spit it out. Her eyes narrowed, the faintest flicker of emotion sliding across them, irritation, maybe curiosity. You assume I dislike you. He huffed a dry laugh. No, I know you do. You look at me like I'm noise you can't turn off. That's accurate, she said coolly. He nodded, jaw tightening. Then say that instead of acting like I'm some science project you can dissect. You don't have to like me, but you're not gonna talk to me like I'm less than you. That last part hit harder than he meant it to. It wasn't anger, it was something older, rawer. The kind of truth that came from being treated like a problem for too many years instead of being seen as a person. For the first time, Wednesday didn't immediately respond. The words hung between them, thick and heavy. Finally, she said, quietly, you mistake scrutiny for superiority. Yeah, he asked. You're a coward. Every sentence out of that pretty mouth is the same damn sentence. Wednesday's chin lifted a fraction. Insults don't strengthen your argument. I don't care. What I care about is how far you'll get before I get tired of this. Her eyes narrowed. Are you threatening me? Naruto took a step closer. Not aggressive, but solid. Unshaken. No, I'm telling you that if you keep poking at people like their experiments, one day, you'll find the wrong one. Someone who doesn't care how clever your words are. Someone who won't talk back, they'll just swing. Wednesday's jaw tightened. And that someone is you. He shrugged. If you keep pushing, maybe. The honesty in his tone carried more weight than any threat. There was no malice, just a warning, simple and human. For a long moment, they stood like that, sun and shadow balanced between them. Then, slowly, she said, you're reckless. He gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. And you're lucky I'm still trying to be better. With that, he turned, shoving his hands in his pockets, walking off toward the courtyard where Enid's laughter carried faintly through the air. Wednesday stayed behind, her reflection dark in the glass of the window beside her. Her pulse had quickened, not from fear, from something else entirely. She whispered to the space, "You won't always be trying." But he was already gone. Wednesday didn't respond. For a heartbeat, she only stared at him, expression perfectly calm, eyes anything but. Then she turned on her heel and walked away, the sharp rhythm of her shoes on stone cutting through the silence. Naruto watched her go, jaw flexing once before he exhaled. "Yeah," he muttered under his breath. "Didn't think so." He was halfway to looking anywhere else when a flash of pink and blue hair broke the edge of his vision. Oh my God! Enid Sinclair came skidding to a stop right in front of him, panting like she'd sprinted the whole way across campus. Her phone was clutched in one glitter-painted hand, her eyes wide with a cocktail of awe, shock, and barely contained gossip. You have to see this," she gasped, shoving the screen toward him before he could say a word. On the display, the fencing hall. Grainy footage, taken from someone's phone, too close, too shaky, but clear enough to see him. Naruto standing mid-ring, mask off, eyes cold, every bit of his easy grin gone. Donovan's helmet flying, the impact, the blur of movement, then the punch. The video froze right as his fist connected. The room on-screen erupted in noise, students gasping, someone shouting, metal clattering. Enid bit her lip, staring at the paused frame. I didn't believe it till I saw it again." Naruto rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, not my best moment. Not your worst, either," she said, voice catching halfway between impressed and mortified. "I mean, you shouldn't have done that, obviously. Totally bad, super not cool." She gestured wildly with her hands, eyes darting back to the screen. "But also, wow." He frowned. "Wow what?" She looked at him, cheeks flushing bright pink. "Just, wow, okay. You didn't even hesitate. Like, who moves that fast?" Everyone else freaked out, and you were just. She mimed the motion, complete with sound effects, bam. Naruto blinked at her. "You're way too excited about this." "I'm concerned," she said quickly, still holding the phone. "Totally concerned. Deeply, profoundly concerned. Also maybe a tiny bit impressed, but mostly concerned." He couldn't help the grin tugging at his mouth. "You're a terrible liar, you know that." "I'm not lying," she said, clearly lying. "Anyway, this thing's already all over Nevermore chat. Half the school's calling you the blonde brawler." "Oh, great," Naruto groaned. "Day 2 and I've already got a nickname. Could be worse," she said with a shrug. "At least it's not Helmet Guy." He laughed, shaking his head. "You seriously came all the way here just to show me that?" "Yeah," she said, lowering her phone and smiling, softer now. "And to make sure you weren't, like, expelled or bleeding or something." "Still here," he said, spreading his arms. "Kinda hungry, but fine." Enid's grin widened again. "Good. Because Weems wants to see you, like, right now." "Figures," Naruto sighed. "You coming too?" "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world," she said, tucking her phone away and motioning dramatically toward the path. "Come on, blonde brawler. Let's go face the music." As they walked off together, the faint sound of the fencing video replayed again from someone else's phone across the courtyard. Cheers, shouts, the thud of a hit. From the far balcony above, Wednesday Addams paused mid-step. She hadn't meant to turn back, but she did. Her eyes found Naruto easily among the crowd, sunlight striking his hair like fire. Enid laughed beside him, bright and unashamed. Wednesday's gaze lingered for a moment longer, then she turned and vanished into the hall without a sound. The conversation between him and the dean never happened, his clone handled the whole thing. He, however, went to his dorm room reading himself for one of his first dates, still not understanding attire. The dorm looked like a war zone between taste and disaster. Shirts hung from the bunk bed like casualties, shoes lay scattered in ranks, and Kent stood in the middle of it all, arms folded, judging. Naruto stood in front of the mirror wearing his usual orange hoodie, grin bright and clueless. Kent sighed like a man being forced to watch a crime in progress. "No," he said. Naruto blinked. "What do you mean, no? This is my look." "Exactly," Kent said, "which is why it needs to die, temporarily, at least. You can't wear that on a date." "Hey, it's my favorite. Orange hoodie," Kent finished for him. "Yeah, I know. The color screams, I'm lost, please return me to my handler." Naruto frowned. "That's harsh. That's fashion," Kent said, striding to the closet. "Also, you're not wearing your school uniform, either. No one wants to date a guy who looks like he's on his way to detention." Again, Naruto opened his mouth, closed it, then scratched his cheek. "Fair. Good," Kent said, already flipping through the closet like a man on a mission. "We're aiming for confident and spontaneous, not escaped from gym class." After a few minutes of rummaging and muttering, he tossed a black shirt at Naruto's chest. "Start with that. It's fitted enough to prove you own shoulders." Naruto pulled it on, kinda tight, because it fits. "Revolutionary concept, I know," Kent said. "Now tuck it in." "Yeah, that's it." "Pants." Naruto looked down. "These are orange." Kent grinned. "Exactly. You can keep the orange, but balance it out. It's your thing. We just refine the chaos." "Refine the chaos," Naruto repeated, amused. "You sound like her." "Flattering," Kent said, ignoring him. "Now, white belt. Nice contrast. Oh, and," he rummaged again before holding up a black and white bomber jacket with silver trim. Kent spun the jacket around once, as if unveiling a masterpiece. "Perfect," he said, the excitement in his voice rising. "This has that bad boy stereotype, but the fading black softens it. Pairs with your whole rugged but trying vibe." Naruto eyed it skeptically. "Rugged but trying? That sounds like a shampoo commercial." Kent rolled his eyes. "Just put it on before I change my mind." Naruto slipped into the jacket. The lining was smooth, and the sleeves were snug yet comfortable. In the mirror, the mix of black and white against the orange pants actually looked intentional. His usual mess had edges now. Kent stepped back, folding his arms. "There. Now you look like a problem worth having." Naruto chuckled. "You spend too much time around sirens, man. You talk like a magazine." "I have standards," Kent said with mock indignation. "Also, you're welcome. That jacket with the orange. Iconic. The white belt breaks it up just enough. You look like you've got a motorcycle parked outside, even though we both know you can barely ride a bike." "Hey, I can ride a bike," Naruto protested. And Enid can whisper," Kent said, smirking. "Face it, she's gonna lose her mind when she sees you like this. Which is exactly why we're doing it." Naruto turned back to the mirror, tugging at the hem of the jacket, shoulders squaring a little. The look was cleaner than he was used to, but still him. He grinned. Not bad, Kent said, affronted. "You look incredible. Now all that's left is to act like you didn't spend 40 minutes deciding what to wear." "I didn't. You did. Details," Kent said, waving it off. "Go make her swoon, Blondie. And for the love of God, if she compliments the jacket, don't say, thanks." Kent picked it out. Naruto laughed, heading for the door. All right, I'll tell her I'm just naturally stylish." Kent pointed a finger. Lies. But sexy lies. The door shut behind him, leaving the room quiet except for Kent's satisfied sigh. "My work here is done," he said, flopping back on his bed. "Now let's see if he can make it through one date without a fight." The road into Jericho was bathed in the late afternoon glow, the kind that turned the town's dull brick and old signage into something almost warm. A breeze rolled through, carrying the smell of sugar and roasted coffee from the Weathervane Cafe. Naruto walked with his hands tucked in his bomber jacket pockets, the orange of his pants flashing bright in the sunlight. Heads turned as he passed, not because he looked out of place, but because he didn't anymore. "Man," he muttered under his breath, glancing at his reflection in a shop window. Kent actually knows what he's doing. That's weird. His foot scuffed a loose pebble down the cobblestone street, the rhythm of his steps easy, relaxed. For once, he wasn't dreading where he was going. He spotted her before she saw him. Enid stood outside the weather vane, bouncing lightly on her toes, checking her phone every 30 seconds. She'd gone all out. Pastel jacket with a faux fur collar, glitter dusted across her cheeks, and a soft pink skirt that shimmered when she moved, a bundle of nerves disguised as a fashion explosion. When she finally looked up and saw him, her eyes widened. Whoa, that was all she managed at first. Naruto grinned, walking up. Hey, Enid blinked, still staring. You look different. In a bad way or a good way? He teased. She tilted her head, still processing. Good way. Like, really good way. Like, whoa, gonna assume that's a compliment. It is, she said quickly, cheeks going pink. Wow. The jacket, the shirt, everything. You actually, he laughed. Kent tried so hard. Naruto snorted, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. Yeah, he did. I think he threatened to burn my hoodie. Enid gasped in mock horror. He should. That thing's a war crime. Hey, that hoodie's iconic, that and you never seen it, he said, pretending to be offended. And it's seen more action than half this town. Exactly, she said, grinning. It should have retired years ago. This, though, she gestured up and down at him, eyes wide with exaggerated awe. This is, like, 10 out of 10. You look like someone who almost listens to rules. Naruto smirked. Almost. You still wore orange pants, she said, giggling. That's not rule following, that's rebellion with extra confidence. Guess I'm consistent. You are, she said softly, smile lingering just a beat longer than it should have. Then she shook it off, twirling a strand of pink-tipped hair around her finger. Anyway, come on, Coco time. I've been waiting all week for this. He blinked. You planned this a week ago. Shish, she said quickly, looping her arm through his and tugging him toward the weather vane. Don't ruin the moment. Not sure I could if I tried, he said, grinning. The weather vane smelled like roasted coffee beans and cheap optimism. Wednesday Addams sat alone in her usual corner booth, black coat folded neatly beside her, notebook open to a half-finished autopsy diagram she'd sketched between sips of coffee. Her cup was cold, but she preferred it that way, bitter, honest, unchanging. Tyler Galpin leaned against the counter, pretending to clean while sneaking looks her way. You know, he said finally, most people come here to relax. Then most people lack imagination, she replied, eyes never leaving the page. He smirked. And you, here to brood professionally, it's a side occupation. The bell over the door jingled before he could respond. Naruto Uzumaki and Enid Sinclair burst in mid-laugh, voices too bright for the dim cafe. Enid's pastel jacket caught the light, her hair bouncing as she waved toward the counter. Naruto followed behind, hands in the pockets of his black and white bomber jacket, grin lazy and unguarded, until his eyes found Wednesday. The grin disappeared. He didn't look away right away, didn't smile, didn't joke. He just stared, blue eyes narrowing a fraction, as if the world had gone quiet for him too. The sound of the cafe dimmed between them, the air shifting into something colder, heavier. Wednesday's pen stilled over the page. She didn't move her head, but her eyes lifted just enough to meet his. A flicker of recognition, challenge, and something darker she refused to name. Neither spoke. Tyler followed her gaze, raising an eyebrow. Friend of yours, an unfortunate acquaintance, she said, tone clipped. Across the room, Enid still hadn't noticed. She was too busy gushing at the pastry display, hands clasped together like it was Christmas morning. Naruto, look, they have cinnamon hazelnut muffins. You have to try one. Naruto's eyes lingered on Wednesday one heartbeat longer, then he blinked, his expression sliding back into neutrality. Yeah, he muttered, his voice lower than usual. Sure, Whatever you want. He turned away, following Enid toward the counter. Tyler smirked. He doesn't seem like your biggest fan. I return the sentiment, Wednesday said flatly, turning back to her notebook. But her pen didn't move. Her focus fractured for the first time that afternoon. She listened instead, to the sound of Enid's laughter, to Naruto's quiet responses, to the faint scrape of a chair as they sat down somewhere behind her. Tyler leaned closer, voice low and teasing. He's glaring at you again. I'm aware, she said. You gonna glare back? I already did, Wednesday said, her tone dry as dust. He blinked first. Tyler laughed, pushing off the counter. You two have weird chemistry. She ignored him, mostly. Her eyes dropped back to her page, but the words blurred together. Her coffee had gone completely cold, and for once, she didn't mind. Across the cafe, Naruto sat with Enid, facing the window but angled just slightly, enough to keep her in his periphery. He didn't talk much, didn't laugh, just stirred his drink slowly, the spoon clinking against the cup in an absent rhythm. Enid didn't notice. She was too busy filling the silence with warmth, telling stories about dorm life, about werewolves, about gossip. But Wednesday noticed everything, and that, more than his glare, more than his silence, irritated her the most. The light was wrong. It poured through the dorm window in wide golden bands, turning the edges of Wednesday's desk soft instead of sharp. Nevermore's towers gleamed in the afternoon sun, the air so clear it was almost indecent. Wednesday Addams preferred storms, gray skies, dripping ivy, the kind of weather that understood her. But today, the world was determined to mock her with brightness. She sat at her desk anyway, sleeves rolled, posture perfect. The old typewriter clicked beneath her fingers with mechanical precision. Clack, clack, clack. Observation log, Addams, W. Subject, Naruto Uzumaki. Classification, undetermined anomaly. Behavior, chaotically social. Physically competent. Emotionally inconsistent. Her eyes flicked toward the window. Below, in the courtyard, sunlight bounced off the glass of the greenhouse and the water fountain's spray shimmered like shards of glass. Naruto and Enid had just returned from Jericho. Their voices carried, bright, unfiltered. Enid was talking fast, spinning some story with her whole body, hands flying, laughter spilling out like she couldn't hold it in. Naruto walked beside her, head tilted slightly to listen, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. He looked irritatingly alive. The kind of person who didn't have to force warmth, it just followed him, whether he wanted it or not. Wednesday's fingers hesitated over the keys. Subject interacts well with others despite limited self-discipline. She frowned, then added. Has an unfortunate tendency to attract attention. Outside, Enid pushed his shoulder playfully. Naruto said something she couldn't hear, and Enid nearly doubled over laughing. When she straightened, the sun hit her hair like fire and reflected across the black trim of his jacket. The image was almost cinematic, all light and color and motion. Wednesday blinked once, then returned to the page. Enid Sinclair remains consistent in her naive optimism. Naruto Uzumaki, however, remains. Her typing slowed, unreadable. She paused there, staring at the word. Her reflection in the typewriter's chrome edge looked like someone else entirely, thoughtful, not analytical. Curious, not calculating. Unacceptable. She struck through the line in one clean motion. Redacted. Outside, Enid said something that made Naruto stop walking. He laughed. A low, unguarded sound, and for some reason it reached her even up here, carried on the wind. She told herself it was irrelevant. She told herself she didn't care. She told herself a great many things. Wednesday inserted another page into the typewriter, the sunlight glaring across her hands. The brightness felt unnatural against her skin. Entry 48. Some phenomena resist classification. Her fingers hovered over the keys a moment longer. Then, with practiced precision, she began typing again, louder this time, as though the sound alone could drown out the laughter drifting up from below. The afternoon had settled into that lazy golden stretch before dinner, the kind of light that made Nevermore's courtyard look like it had been dipped in honey. Naruto walked alongside Enid, both of them heading back toward the dorms, laughing about something stupid from the cafe, mostly the way the whipped cream had ended up on her nose. "I swear, you did that on purpose," he said, trying not to grin. "I did not," Enid protested, swiping at him. "It was a cocoa malfunction." "Sure it was. Oh, don't make me prove you wrong." She stopped walking, eyes glinting mischievously. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What? You gonna throw more whipped cream at me?" Enid smiled, slow, confident, and lifted one hand. Her nails extended, smooth and fast, gleaming silver under the light. They caught the sun like small blades, the sharp tips curling ever so slightly. Naruto blinked. "Whoa." Enid flexed her fingers, claws glinting brighter. "What? Never seen a werewolf before?" "Not like that," he said, staring. That's new." She tilted her head, clearly pleased at his reaction. "You like?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "They're cool, yeah, kinda unexpected, though." "Unexpected? Yeah," he said, still half distracted by how the light played along her claws. "More of a dog thing, right? You know, barking, biting." Enid gasped dramatically. "Excuse me." Naruto blinked, suddenly aware he'd said something wrong. "What? I am not just a dog," she said, clutching her chest with exaggerated offense. "I'm a sophisticated, fashion-forward, emotionally in-touch predator." "Right," he said, trying not to laugh. She leaned forward, lowering her voice in mock seriousness. "You can call me kitten." He froze. "What? Kitten?" she repeated, eyes sparkling with mischief. "It's cute, right? Fits the claws." Naruto stared at her like she'd just declared herself queen of the moon. "You're a werewolf. That's like Dog Central." "Yeah, but kittens are adorable and dangerous," she said, spinning one claw lazily in the air. "You know, like me." He blinked again, utterly lost. "That's not how animals work." She laughed, a bright, musical sound that filled the courtyard. "Oh my god, you're such a boy. He gestured helplessly. "You can't be a dog and a cat. It's, like, illegal somewhere." "Illegal?" she teased, leaning closer. "What? You gonna arrest me, Officer Naruto?" He groaned, running a hand through his hair. "You're impossible, thank you," she said sweetly, retracting her claws with a faint metallic click. "Takes practice." Enid turned the key slowly, unlocking the door, but didn't open it. "So, guess this is me." "Yeah," he said quietly. "Guess so." She didn't move to go inside. Her hand stayed on the doorknob, her body angled slightly toward him. Naruto noticed. He noticed everything in that second. The way her hair caught the sunset, how her fingers flexed nervously against the metal, the small smile that wasn't her usual bright one. He cleared his throat. "You good?" "Yeah." A pause. "I just thought." He tilted his head. "What?" Her claws clicked softly against the door handle as they slid out just a little, not threatening, not even intentional. "Just instinct. I thought you might." She hesitated, lips curving faintly. "Say goodnight properly." He blinked. "Properly." Enid looked up at him through her lashes, the faintest blush coloring her cheeks. "You know, like in movies. Or not in movies. Just. Which movie? Like Black Hawk Down or Grown Ups? Why are boys stupid?" she thought, her heart thudding too fast. He was right there, close enough that she could see the way his hair caught the hallway light, close enough to smell the faint trace of rain and cedar on his jacket. And still, he just stared. So she did what any self-respecting werewolf with a crush and zero patience would do. She took what she wanted. Grabbing a handful of his shirt, Enid yanked him down and kissed him. Naruto froze, only for a heartbeat. Then his instincts caught up before his brain could. His hands found her waist, steady but gentle, grounding both of them as she pressed closer. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't practiced. It was warm, messy, Real, the kind of kiss that left his pulse pounding and her claws digging slightly into the fabric of his jacket. When she finally pulled back, her breathing hitched, cheeks flushed pink. That, she whispered, voice a little unsteady, was properly. Naruto stared at her for a moment, half dazed, half stunned. Then he grinned, not his usual smirk, but something smaller, softer. Yeah, I got it now. Enid smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Good. Don't make me do all the work next time. Next time? He asked, still catching his breath. Naruto didn't even get a word out. 1 second, she was smiling at him, sweet, teasing, and the next, Enid had fisted his shirt again and pulled him back down. This kiss wasn't hesitant. It wasn't testing the waters. It was full of energy, warmth, and the kind of confidence that didn't ask for permission. Her hands slid up to his collar, holding him close as if daring him to move away. He didn't. Naruto's surprise melted into a low, breathless laugh against her mouth before he kissed her back, less polished, more honest. The kind of kiss that said, "Okay, you win." Her claws flexed once through the fabric at his shoulders before retracting, leaving only the soft pressure of her hands. The air between them buzzed with quiet, messy electricity, the hallway, the school, the entire world shrinking to just that small space where sunlight met her hair and her heartbeat matched his. She is fully engaged with him at this point, putting everything she has into it. Leading his hands, he lifted her easily, steadying her as their laughter broke the kiss for half a heartbeat before they found each other again, slower this time, softer. Not hunger, but certainty. This is their first date. Is this normal? She was fully engaged with him now, every bit of nervous energy turned into motion, into warmth, into want. Her fingers traced the edge of his collar, his hands found her waist, steady and sure. When she pulled him closer again, he caught her easily, lifting her just enough that she wasn't on her toes anymore, his back brushing the wall as the world narrowed to the sound of shared breath and the faint thrum of his heartbeat in her chest. The kiss slowed before it stopped, soft laughter breaking between them as if they'd both remembered to breathe at the same time. Enid rested her forehead against his, smiling so wide it almost hurt. "You're terrible at kissing." Naruto blinked, half breathless. "Wow, brutal." She laughed, brushing a hand against his chest. "I'm serious. You've got enthusiasm. Like, a lot of enthusiasm. But no rhythm." He grinned, scratching the back of his neck. "Guess I'm a little out of practice." Enid raised an eyebrow, teasing. "A little, okay, fine," he said, still smiling. "A lot out of practice." She tilted her head, curious now. "So what, you haven't kissed anyone before?" He hesitated, then shrugged, honest as ever. "You're my second." Enid blinked, stunned for a beat. "Second," he nodded, trying to look casual but failing completely. "Yeah, first one didn't really count. It was kinda a mistake." Her eyes softened immediately. "Oh." Then, with that bright spark that was so her, she added, "So this was your first real one?" Naruto gave a small laugh, rubbing the back of his neck again. "Guess so." Enid's grin returned, slow, mischievous, warm. "Then I feel honored." He chuckled. "Yeah, even if I'm bad at it." "Terrible," she said, deadpan, then leaned up, her voice dropping softer. "But fixable." Before he could respond, she grabbed his collar again and kissed him a second time, slower this time, deliberate, her smile brushing against his lips. It wasn't rushed or fiery like before. It was patient, certain, teaching him how it was supposed to feel. When she pulled back, her claws had barely touched the fabric of his jacket. Her eyes were still closed for half a second, her breathing uneven. "Better," she whispered. Naruto smiled, quieter now. "Yeah, way better." She opened her eyes, looking up at him through her lashes. "See, you can learn." He grinned. "Guess I had a good teacher." "Damn right," she said, laughing softly as she backed toward her door. "But class is over for today." He chuckled, stepping back. "What? No extra credit?" Enid shook her head, still smiling. Maybe next time, Uzumaki. He watched her slip into her room, the door clicking softly shut behind her. For a long moment, he just stood there, dazed and grinning like an idiot. Wednesday's dorm was quiet except for the keys of her typewriter, each strike deliberate, measured. Clack, clack, clack. Then the door opened. "Hey, roomie," Enid sang out. Wednesday didn't look up. "You're late. 17 minutes. Enid shut the door behind her, humming a tune that sounded far too pleased with itself. There was glitter on her cheek, her hair slightly disheveled, and her lipstick was a vague suggestion of its former self, a smear of pink at the corner of her mouth, the rest clearly missing in action. Wednesday's fingers paused above the keys. She turned, just enough to look. One eyebrow lifted, the faintest movement of her head betraying a single thought, evidence. Enid caught the stare, froze for half a heartbeat, then smiled a little too wide. "Don't say anything." Wednesday blinked once. "I wasn't planning to. Your appearance speaks loudly enough." Enid groaned, grabbing a makeup wipe from her desk. "It's not what it looks like." Wednesday's gaze lingered exactly 2 seconds longer than necessary. "Then you might wish to invest in a mirror before trying that defense." Enid huffed, turning away, scrubbing at her lips. "You're impossible, and you're fluorescent," Wednesday replied evenly, returning to her typewriter. The sound of keys filled the room again, but her rhythm wasn't as precise as usual. Her eyes flicked once more to the window, where the reflection of Enid's grin hovered like a ghost in the glass. Entry 52. Subject: Enid Sinclair returns from date exhibiting symptoms of elation and disarray. Possible cause: physical affection. Reaction: mild irritation, moderate curiosity. She stopped typing for a moment, listening to Enid hum as she reapplied her lipstick. The color was too bright, the tune too cheerful, and the warmth in the room too persistent to ignore. Wednesday exhaled softly through her nose, adjusted her collar, and resumed typing. Conclusion: the world continues its insistence on joy. Clack, 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 clack. The keys were precise, controlled, and only slightly louder than necessary. Behind her, Enid was spinning in her desk chair, phone in hand, humming the same song she'd been humming since dawn. And then he smiled, like, really smiled, you know that smile where you can actually feel it. Like, it's not fake, it's just, warm. Wednesday didn't look up. "I'm unfamiliar with that particular sensation." Enid ignored the sarcasm. "He's such a dork. He said I was his second kiss ever. Can you believe that?" A pause. Then, very dryly, "Yes." Enid laughed, tossing a pillow at her. "Don't be mean. It was actually kind of sweet. He was so nervous at first, and terrible." She sighed dramatically, leaning back in her chair. "Like, truly awful. Zero technique. I almost stopped." Wednesday's fingers stilled on the keys. "And yet, somehow, you didn't." "Nope," Enid said proudly, oblivious to the thin edge in her roommate's tone. "He's a fast learner. By the end of it, well, let's just say, he passed the pop quiz." Wednesday exhaled slowly through her nose, resuming her typing with mechanical precision. Clack, clack, clack. Enid spun again, dreamy-eyed. "And then he walked me back, said goodnight, and smiled that stupid smile." It was so, she clutched her chest. Rom-com levels of perfect. "I'll alert the press," Wednesday muttered. "What's that supposed to mean?" Enid asked, half pouting. "It means," Wednesday said without turning, "that if your tale of hormonal triumph continues, I may require earplugs." Enid laughed, unconcerned. "You're just jealous." That made Wednesday pause, barely, but noticeably. Her hands froze over the typewriter keys for exactly one heartbeat before moving again. "Jealousy," she said flatly, is an emotion reserved for those who find other people's affections worth coveting. Enid grinned. "So, yeah, you're jealous." Wednesday looked up at her then, calm, cold, perfectly unreadable. "I'd sooner envy a corpse." Enid only smiled brighter. "You're so dramatic. You'd like him if you gave him a chance." "Unlikely," Wednesday said, but as Enid launched into another story, the hot cocoa, the jokes, the way Naruto had made her laugh so hard she nearly spilled her drink, Wednesday's eyes drifted to the window. Outside, sunlight flashed against the distant courtyard where a certain blonde figure crossed the cobblestones, jacket half-zipped, grin catching the morning light. Her expression didn't change, not outwardly, but her next keystroke landed harder than the rest. Clack. Entry 53. Subject Sinclair remains insufferably lovesick. Additional note. Uzumaki remains distracting. She stared at the page for a moment too long before striking the final key. Countermeasure. None. Clack. By the time Naruto made it back to the boys' dorms, the halls had gone quiet, the kind of late-night calm that made every creak of the floorboards sound guilty. He slipped into his room, still grinning like an idiot, jacket half unzipped, his hair a mess. The fish tank glowed lazily in the corner. Kent was sprawled on his bed, scrolling through his phone, the blue light flickering across his face. The siren looked up, and instantly froze. Then burst out laughing. Naruto lay sprawled on his bed, arms behind his head, staring at the ceiling. The glitter was mostly gone, but Kent's laughter still hung in the air. Okay. Real question, Naruto said finally. Is she, normally that quick to kiss people? Kent snorted. You mean Enid? Nah, she's not running around kissing random guys, if that's what you're asking. Naruto turned his head. Then what's with? He gestured vaguely toward himself, all this. Kent chuckled. Oh, that's not a you problem, that's a species thing. Naruto frowned. Species thing? Yeah, Kent said, waving a hand like it was obvious. Werewolves, sirens, gorgons, vampires, everyone's got their own social rhythm, I guess. Most outcasts are more instinctual than the normies. You feel something, you act on it. Especially werewolves. Naruto blinked. So she kissed me because, what, instinct? Pretty much, Kent said, grinning. Don't look so confused. Werewolves don't waste time pretending they don't like someone. They feel it, they show it. Makes life a lot simpler. Naruto laughed under his breath. Simple, huh? Feels like I missed a chapter somewhere. Kent smirked. Welcome to Nevermore. Everyone here's got rules, man. For wolves, it's all about connection. Pack bonding, instincts, scent, touch. If Enid kissed you that fast, that means she actually likes you. Naruto tilted his head, the grin returning slowly. Guess I did something right, then. Kent laughed. Buddy, you did a lot right. She came back glowing like she just won a contest. Naruto chuckled, rubbing his neck. Didn't think kissing someone could be, educational. Oh, it's educational, all right, Kent said with a smirk. You're basically enrolled in Werewolf 101 now. Don't mess it up. Naruto grinned, tossing a pillow at him. Yeah, I'll try not to fail the class. Kent caught it, laughing. Good plan, Uzumaki. Good plan. Naruto leaned back again, the smile still lingering as he stared at the ceiling. Guess this school's full of surprises. Kent grinned, turning off his lamp. You have no idea. Oh my god, dude. Naruto blinked. What? Kent sat up, phone forgotten, pointing at him with wide eyes. What happened to you? You look like you lost a fight with a disco ball. What? Naruto repeated, confused. Kent swung his legs over the side of the bed, still laughing. Glitter. Man. Glitter everywhere. You've got. Hold still. He leaned closer, cackling. You've got lipstick on your chin, your neck, and, holy hell, is that on your nose? Naruto's hand shot up to his face, rubbing at the spots. Oh, come on, that can't be. He looked down at his fingers, which now sparkled like fairy dust. Oh, she did not. Kent was doubled over, wheezing. She did. You look like you made out with a craft store. Naruto groaned, tugging off his jacket. You're not helping, man. I don't want to help. Kent said, wiping a tear from his eye. I want to remember this forever. Great. Add it to the gossip feed. Naruto muttered, trying to scrub his jaw clean with his sleeve. Kent smirked. Too late, already there. Someone posted a blurry shot of you two walking back. Caption says, Nevermore's golden boy glitters for his girl. Naruto froze mid-swipe. You're kidding. Not even a little. Naruto sighed, dropping onto his bed. Man, this school's insane. Correction, Kent said, grinning. You're insane. She's just keeping up. Naruto laughed softly, leaning back against the headboard. Yeah, maybe. Kent raised an eyebrow, smirk widening. So, was it worth looking like a human glitter bomb? Naruto hesitated, then smiled, small, real, a little dazed. Yeah, he said quietly. It was. Kent snorted, tossing him a wet wipe. You sap. Yeah, Naruto muttered, rubbing the last of the glitter from his neck. Don't tell anyone, Kent chuckled. Buddy, I don't need to. Half the school already knows. Naruto groaned again, dragging a pillow over his face. Kill me, Kent laughed, lying back on his bed. Nah, man, you're living the dream, glitter and all. The room fell quiet except for the hum of the aquarium and the faint rustle of the night wind outside. Naruto pulled the pillow down just enough to look at the ceiling, that same dumb smile finding its way back. Yeah, he murmured. Maybe I am. Naruto rolled onto his side, propping his head up on one hand. Alright, you can't just drop that and not explain. What about the other species? You said everyone's got rules. Kent grinned, clearly enjoying himself. Oh man, where do I even start? Okay, so, werewolves you already figured out. They're all heart and instinct. If they like you, you know. Yeah, Naruto muttered, half smiling. I noticed. Right, then you've got vampires, Kent continued, gesturing with his hands like a professor. They play it cool, pretend they don't care, but it's all drama. Everything with them's about control, eye contact, posture, power. You'll never win a staring contest with one. Ever. Naruto laughed softly. Good to know. Sirens, Kent said, tapping his chest. My people, we flirt like breathing. It's half instinct, half performance. A lot of singing, a lot of eye contact. But when we really like someone, we get quiet. Like, dangerously quiet. That's when you know a siren means it. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You, quiet, Kent smirked. It's rare. Happens once a decade. Naruto chuckled, shaking his head. Alright, what about Gorgons? Gorgons are chill, Kent said. They keep to themselves unless you earn their trust. Then they're loyal for life. Kind of like snakes. Cold-blooded, but they'll coil around the people they care about. Literally sometimes. Sounds like a bad day for personal space. Yeah, but you get used to it, Kent said with a laugh. Then you've got the oddballs, Hydes, Banshees. Those guys are unpredictable. Some of them see emotions differently. Like, totally literal. It's less about love or crushes and more about connection. Energy, soul stuff. Naruto hummed thoughtfully, staring at the ceiling. So basically, everyone here runs on instinct, emotion, or chaos. Kent grinned. Congratulations, you just summed up Nevermore in one sentence. Naruto chuckled, shaking his head. Guess that explains a lot. Kent gave him a side look. About what? The glitter or the girl? Both, Naruto said with a crooked grin. Kent laughed, tossing his phone onto the nightstand. Man, you fit in better here than you think. Naruto smiled faintly, eyes closing. Not sure about that, trust me, Kent said, already half asleep. You're one of us now. Whether you like it or not. Naruto didn't answer, just let out a soft chuckle. The room went quiet except for the aquarium's hum and the wind brushing against the window. Yeah, he whispered to himself, the grin returning. Could be worse. Naruto rolled over onto his stomach, grinning. Alright, so you've told me how everyone dates. Which group flirts the most? Like, who's the biggest drama when it comes to crushes? Kent smirked, tossing a pillow at him. You mean who's the most likely to start a love triangle before lunch? Yeah, that. Oh, that's easy. Sirens, Kent said without hesitation. We live for the spectacle. Boys, girls, merfolk, landfolk, doesn't matter. If it sparkles, someone's flirting with it. Naruto laughed. So basically you, basically me, Kent said proudly. But vampires give us a run for our money. Eternal life means eternal bad decisions. Naruto snorted. And the wolves? Kent stretched out, grinning. Wolves fall hard and stay there. One scent, one spark, and suddenly it's fated mate, this pack bond, that. Naruto shook his head, chuckling. Man, this school's insane. Welcome to Nevermore, Kent said, where the hormones have supernatural side effects. The door opened with a creak, and the clone stepped in, still wiping his hands on a rag that looked like it had survived a small war. His hair was a little frizzed from the humidity of the gym, his expression half exhausted, half triumphant. Detention, he declared, is officially over. Floors mopped, swords polished, chairs stacked in perfect symmetry. You're welcome. Kent looked up from his bed, then at the original Naruto, who was halfway through unlacing his boots. You're really gonna make me pretend this is normal? The real Naruto grinned. Hey, he wanted ramen. I pay my people well. The clone crossed his arms. Correction. I work for ramen. There's a difference. Kent raised an eyebrow. How big of a difference? The clone blinked like the question was ridiculous. The size of a bowl. A deep one. Fresh broth, springy noodles, rich yolk, oh man. His voice trailed into a reverent sigh. You ever had the kind that steams your face and hits your soul at the same time? Kent stared, amused. You sound like you're in love. I am, the clone said, dead serious. With miso. The real Naruto laughed. He's not kidding. Ramen's sacred, man. It's like life in a bowl. Kent threw up his hands. You guys are insane. Insanely right, the clone countered, pacing toward the desk like a preacher at a podium. Do you know what that cafeteria calls ramen? Instant noodles. Instant. It's a crime. Broth should simmer for hours. Noodles should bounce. And don't even get me started on prepackaged toppings. Okay, Kent interrupted, laughing so hard he nearly dropped his phone. I get it. You've got standards. Standards. The clone repeated, aghast. No, I have faith. Ramen deserves respect. He clasped his hands dramatically. A warm hug for your stomach. A promise the world isn't all bad. Naruto smirked. See what I mean? He gets me. Of course I do. The clone said, puffing up. We share a stomach. Kent looked between them, shaking his head. I can't tell if this is tragic or beautiful. The clone grinned. Both. Now, where's my bowl? Naruto tossed him a takeout container. Still warm. The clone caught it, eyes shining. Oh, you legend. He ripped the lid off, inhaling deeply, the aroma filling the room. Kent watched, bewildered. You're acting like that's the holy grail. The clone froze mid-bite, spoon halfway to his mouth. This is the holy grail. He took a slurp that was entirely too loud for the hour, closed his eyes, and exhaled like a man reaching enlightenment. Perfect. So let me get this straight. You make a clone spend a day waxing swords to go out with a cute little werewolf all for a bowl of ramen. Yeah, Kent paused, then shrugged. Fair deal. Naruto and his clone exchanged a look and said together, perfectly in sync, ramen's always worth it. Kent groaned into his pillow. I live with lunatics. The clone slurped again, smiling blissfully. Lunatics with taste. Shortly, Naruto destroyed his clone and passed out, followed swiftly by Kent. Neither of them realizes just how much life will change by the next morning. Jericho looked different under the festival lights. Strings of paper lanterns hung across the square, glowing orange and gold. The air smelled like caramel apples, bonfire smoke, and fried dough, the kind of scent that wrapped around you like a memory you hadn't lived yet. Naruto was still adjusting to the whole date concept. Enid had said the word casually that afternoon, we're going to the harvest festival tonight. As a date, he'd laughed, assuming she was joking. She wasn't. Now she was beside him, holding a cup of hot cider and looking like she'd stepped out of a pastel dream, pink jacket with silver trim, blue skirt that caught the light when she moved, nails painted to match her smile. "You're thinking too hard," she said, bumping his shoulder. "Yeah, sorry, just, never really did the whole date thing before." Enid grinned, her fangs catching the light. "Lucky for you, I'm a great teacher." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because the last time someone said that, I ended up fighting for my life." "That sounds like a you problem," she said, already tugging him toward a booth lined with pumpkins. "Come on, you have to try ring toss." Naruto groaned. "I at ring toss? You've literally fought people." "Yeah, and I lost to a clown game at the last fair I went to." "You don't understand, they cheat." Enid's grin widened. "Then cheat better." They wandered after that, games, food stalls, a photo booth Enid insisted on, where he looked confused in every frame and she looked delighted. The noise and color of the festival blurred together until it felt like they were moving through their own world, separate from the rest. When they finally stopped to catch their breath, Enid was laughing so hard she had to lean on him for balance. Okay, you're actually fun. Like, not just, not boring, fun. Real fun. Don't sound so shocked," he said, smiling. She caught his eye, and for a heartbeat, the fair's noise seemed to fade. "Guess I'm not. What's next?" he asked, staring at the vast amount of everything this fair had to show. "Ferris wheel. Best place for a date." Winking, Naruto missed the underlying possibility in favor of watching Wednesday crawling away from a group of boys looking for her. "Sweet. Just let me hit the bathroom first." "Gross." Naruto laughed, raising his hands in mock surrender. "What, you'd rather I vanish mid-ride?" Enid wrinkled her nose. "Fine, but don't take forever. I want the top seat before the line gets crazy." "Deal." He took a few steps backward through the crowd, grinning. "Save me a spot, Sparkplug." She waved him off, already turning toward the Ferris wheel queue. The lights flickered pink and gold across her hair as she joined the line, chatting with a couple of vampires from fencing class. Naruto ducked between the booths, the laughter and music thinning around him. The path to the bathrooms curved behind the tents, leading to a darker, quieter area. Somewhere to his left, a generator hummed, steady and low. He stopped halfway there. In a moment, a second later, he appeared and, without orders, ran to meet Enid. The real Naruto stayed where he was, watching the shadows beyond the lanterns where the laughter didn't quite reach. A figure, small, black-clad, was slipping away from the edge of the fair and into the trees. "Wednesday." Naruto sighed. "Of course it's her." He pulled his hood up, stepped off the path, and followed. The noise of the fair had long vanished behind him, swallowed by the trees. Moonlight dripped through the branches in thin, pale lines, painting the ground in broken silver. Naruto slowed when voices reached him, one steady, the other trembling. "Rowan," Wednesday said, her tone cool and sharp. "You're delusional." "I'm not." Rowan's voice cracked, half fury, half fear. "You're the one from the drawing. You're the one who destroys Nevermore." Naruto pushed through the last line of trees and froze. Wednesday hung suspended in midair, feet barely touching the ground, caught in a shimmering field of psychic force. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes darted toward him as he stepped out from the shadows. "Hey!" Naruto's voice cut across the clearing like a whip. Rowan jerked around, startled. His hand trembled, the energy around him flickering. "Stay back." Naruto raised both hands slowly, his tone calm. "Easy, man. No one's gonna hurt you. She's going to destroy everything." Rowan shouted. "I saw it. She's the reason the school burns." "Maybe you saw something," Naruto said carefully, taking a step closer. "But that doesn't make it true. Visions don't decide what we do, we do." Rowan shook his head, panic twisting his face. "You don't understand." "Then help me," Naruto said, voice low, steady. "Make me understand. What do you think she's gonna do? What are you so scared of?" He was shown an image, clear as day, on Wednesday, standing around a destroyed building with fires surrounding her. My mother was a seer. This was the last thing she saw. She's destroying everything. The energy surged, crackling bright enough to sting the air. Leaves shuddered, dirt lifting from the ground. Naruto took another careful step forward, eyes steady. Then she's got a choice, right? So do you. You don't have to be part of making that vision real. Rowan blinked, breath hitching. What? You're scared of a future that hasn't happened yet, Naruto said, voice firm but not unkind. I've seen people ruin their lives that way. They try so hard to stop it, they end up causing it. For a heartbeat, Rowan's grip faltered. The glow dimmed. Behind him, Wednesday dropped to the ground, coughing once. She looked up at Naruto, surprised that it wasn't strength or power that had stopped Rowan, but words. Naruto didn't even glance her way, his eyes stayed on Rowan. You want to save the school? Then stop fighting ghosts. Rowan's breathing quickened. The energy around him wavered like heat haze. I didn't want this, he whispered. I thought if I stopped her. Naruto's tone softened. Then stop. For the first time, Rowan's hand lowered. The air went still. The psychic current ebbed until it was just the rustle of wind in the trees again. Wednesday rose to her feet, silent, watchful. How did you? She started, but the question died on her lips. Naruto exhaled, tension easing from his shoulders. Guess he just needed someone to listen. But before he could take another breath, a thump caused his very body to shake, as if an earthquake shook his step by just a second. Instinct screamed. Naruto spun. Too late. The thing was already there. A blur of claws and pale muscle crashed down where he'd been standing seconds ago, the impact splitting the earth at his feet. A gust of hot, foul breath hit his face. Rowan's scream tore through the clearing, cut short just as fast. Naruto's eyes snapped to the sound. Rowan was already on the ground, blood pooling beneath him, his body limp, eyes wide in shock. The creature crouched over him, hulking, wrong, its skin stretched taut over twitching sinew. Its head turned, slow, deliberate, until its golden eyes found Naruto. They were too bright, too knowing. One step, two. It's gonna kill him. Try anyway. In a single moment, this odd, human-looking creature lunged forward, ignoring Wednesday as its claws slammed into the ground. She watched, shocked, witnessing Naruto sidestep that attack, blood in the air as a trench knife with a 4-inch blade was in his hands. This entire time, did he hold a knife? And where? Wednesday froze where she stood, eyes locked on him. She'd seen fights before, calculated, rehearsed, but not this. This was survival. Naruto slashed low, the blade catching the creature across the forearm. Black-red blood sprayed, sizzling where it hit the ground. The thing recoiled with a roar that rattled the air. He didn't hesitate. He pressed in, every movement sharp, efficient, trained. Not fencing, not sport, something older. Something that knew how to kill. The monster lashed out, its claws grazing his jacket, ripping the fabric but missing his skin. Naruto drove forward again, knife flashing once, twice, then the creature was gone, vanishing into the treeline with a crash that shook the branches. Silence. Naruto stood there, breathing hard, blade trembling faintly in his grip. No one dared to say anything. Naruto was breathing heavy, maybe from how quickly he had to move to survive, or realizing just how close he was. Rowan, he yelled, snapping back to reality, seeing the boy lying on the ground with his own blood. Only for a thump again. Wednesday's vision went black as Uzumaki Naruto was impaled and cut in two.